Hey guys, how you doing? I felt like starting today's show with a song. I'm in a singing mood. I'm exhausted because I worked today at the capitalist job, so I feel like today's stream is gonna be pretty loosey goosey today. Pretty loosey goosey day today. I think. I don't think it's gonna be anything other than completely loosey goosey. So I figure, why not start with a song? These times they are uncertain, of that there is no doubt, and nobody can tell me quite what it's all about. The heartbreak and the loneliness, the chaos and the fear will make even the strongest cry, I wish my ma was here. A young man on a battlefield fights for a rich man's gold. The bullet cracks into his spine, he knows he won't grow old. And as the tears come streaming down, at once his mind goes clear. The war was fought for nothing, he cries, I wish my ma was here. A lively story well in hand, a joke to soothe your soul. When it came to arguing, she'd forgive and let it go. And when I cried, she held me, told me it's okay, my dear. And as we face these darkened days, I wish my ma was here. And as we march into the streets, as all the righteous do, we'll raise our voices to the skies. They cannot stop the truth. And as we tear their structures down, we'll raise a victory cheer. We made the world a better place, and I wish my ma was here. Yeah, we made the world a better place. I wish my ma was here. Hey, how you guys doing out there? That guy, XD, good to see you guys. What a day, what a day, what a day. I worked my capitalist job today. Gabriel, good to see you, my man. Good to see you. Hope you guys are all doing really well out there as we head towards the weekend. Right now, I'm in a position where my manager is away on vacation, and that means that I'm working more days, and that includes on a day that I'm streaming. So I usually don't work at the capitalist job today, but I did today. So I'm going to be sleepy today, I think. Going to be pretty low energy day today. But that's okay. We are here to stand in solidarity with one another. Here to try to decipher what the heck is going on out in the world. I think, why don't we start today? This is an article that I saw, and I immediately was like, I gotta read this one. I gotta read this one. This is from The Breach. CBC has whitewashed Israel's crimes in Gaza. I saw it firsthand. For those of you who don't know, the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, is a Canadian state-funded television and media apparatus and media station that has been accused in the past of disseminating liberal propaganda. The Conservatives are very much interested in defunding the CBC. It's one of their party platforms, which I think is Essentially them saying that the only type of media that Canadians should have access to is the billionaire-funded media. State-funded media, boo, you can't have that. But I'm not at all surprised to hear that the CBC is whitewashing Israel's crimes in Gaza, as the CBC stands as the state apparatus for the state propaganda network for Canada, and the government has been pro-Israel for quite a long time. Long Defiant, good to see you, my man. U.S. reclassified Mary Jane to Schedule 3 today. Biden is desperate. He loathes the devil's lettuce. Yeah, I mean, he sees that it's worked in other places, right? Oh, just let him have weed. Yeah, weed, that'll do it. Just everybody has weed and everybody will chill out, right? You know what would really make everybody chill out? Housing. Housing, I think, would make everybody chill out. Working for 5 years as a producer at the public broadcaster, I witnessed the double standards and discrimination in its coverage of Palestine, and especially directly how CBC disciplines those who speak out. This is Molly Schumann. The executive producer peered at me with concern. It was November 16th, 2023, and I had been called into a virtual meeting at CBC. I was approaching my 6th year with the public broadcaster, where I worked as a producer in television and radio. He said he could tell I was passionate about what was happening in Gaza. His job, he told me, was to ensure my passion wasn't making me bias. He said I hadn't crossed the line yet, but that I had to be careful. The conversation ended with him suggesting that I might want to go on mental health leave. I declined. My mind was fine. I could see clearly what was happening. Earlier that day, I had spoken out at a meeting with my team at CBC News Network, the broadcaster's 24-hour television news channel. It was 6 weeks into Israel's siege and bombardment of the Gaza Strip, which had, at the time, killed over 11,000 Palestinians, the majority of them women and children. Legal experts were already suggesting that what was taking place could be a potential genocide, with an Israeli Holocaust scholar calling it a textbook case. I expressed concern to my team about the frequency of Palestinian guests getting cancelled, the scrutiny brought to bear on their statements, and the pattern of double standards in our coverage. After this, I pitched a reasonable and balanced interview. 2 genocide scholars with opposing views, discussing whether Israel's actions and rhetoric fit the legal definition of the crime. Senior colleagues sounded panicked. My executive producer replied that we had to be careful not to put hosts in a difficult position. They wanted time to consult with higher-ups before making a decision. A few hours later, I was sitting across the same executive, being warned about crossing the line. The following afternoon, I showed up for what was supposed to be a typical meeting to go over the interviews we had lined up for the coming days. But some unusual guests were present. In addition to my co-workers, the faces of my executive producer and his higher-ups appeared on Google Meet. The managers were there to talk about my pitch. They said they weren't vetoing it. They weren't meant to even make editorial decisions, but suggesting our show wasn't the best venue. I pointed out that the network was deemed a suitable place for interviews with guests who characterized Russia's war on Ukraine and China's oppression of the Uyghurs as incidents of genocide. The managers looked uncomfortable. I was reassigned to work on a panel with 2 guests calling on the West to support regime change in Moscow and Tehran. Ever since these unusual meetings had started, I had recorded them for my protection. But that wasn't the end of the blowback. The next week, late on a Friday afternoon, I received an email from the same 2 managers who had poured cold water on my pitch. They needed to speak to me urgently. Over the phone, I was asked to keep the conversation secret. They told me I had hurt the feelings of some of my coworkers, but it was more than just hurt feelings. Someone was accusing me of anti-Semitism. It had appeared I crossed the line. Trying to work your way up to a permanent position at Canada's public broadcaster requires knowing the sort of stories, angles, and guests that are acceptable and which are out of bounds. As a precarious casual employee, a class worker that makes up over a quarter of CBC's workforce, it hadn't taken me long to realize that the subject of Israel-Palestine was to be avoided wherever possible. When it was covered, it was tacitly expected to be framed in such a way as to obscure history and sanitize contemporary reality. After October 7th, it was no longer possible for the corporation to continue avoiding it. But because CBC had never properly contextualized the world's longest active military occupation in the lead up to that atrocity, it was ill-equipped to report on what happened next. The CBC would spend the following months whitewashing the horrors that Israel would visit on Palestinians in Gaza. In the days after Israel began its bombing campaign, this was already evident. While virtually no scrutiny was applied to Israeli officials and experts, an unprecedented level of suspicion was being brought to bear on the family members of those trapped in Gaza. My job required me to vet the work of associate producers and to oversee interviews, so I was well positioned to see the double standards up close. At first, out of concern that I would jeopardize my chances of landing a staff job that I had recently applied for, I only voiced mild pushback. But as the death toll mounted, my career started to seem less important. If journalists in Gaza were sacrificing their lives to tell the truth, I should at least be prepared to take some risks. Besides, I naively told myself, it would be easier for me to dissent than most of my colleagues. I am of mixed Jewish heritage, having been raised by a father who fled the Holocaust as a young child and dealt with the lifelong trauma and guilt of surviving while his family members were murdered by the Nazis. It would be more challenging, I believed, for cynical actors to wield false accusations of anti-Semitism against me. I turned out to be wrong. The Palestine exception at CBC. In the run-up to October 7th, a senior colleague said that if we were lucky, the news gods would shine on us and put an end to a stretch of slow news days. Waking up on that fateful Saturday to multiple alerts on my phone, I knew that both the world and my professional life were about to dramatically change. Even before October 2023, trying to persuade senior CBC colleagues to report accurately on Palestinians was a struggle. Here are some of the TV interview ideas that a colleague and I pitched, but had turned down. Human Rights Watch's 2021 report designating Israel as an apartheid state. The Sheikh Jarrah evictions in the same year. Israel assassinating Palestinian-American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh in 2022, and the Israeli bombing of the Jenin refugee camp in July 2023. The last of these ideas was initially greenlit, but was later canceled because a senior producer was concerned that the host would have too much on her plate. Around this time, I also pitched someone from the Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem to talk about the potential impact of a widely protested judicial reforms on Palestinians. But this was nixed for fear of complaints. These would become familiar excuses. After October 7th, I dreaded going to work. Every shift, the impact of the bias went into overdrive. Even at this early stage, Israeli officials were making genocidal statements that were being ignored in our coverage. On October 9th, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said, "I have ordered a complete siege on the Gaza Strip. There will be no electricity, no food, no fuel. Everything is closed. We are fighting human animals and we act accordingly." Even after this comment, my executive producer was still quibbling over uses in our scripts of the word besieged or references to the plight of the Palestinians. On October 20th, I suggested having Hamam Farah, a Palestinian-Canadian psychotherapist, backed on the network. In an earlier interview, he had told us that his family were sheltering in St. Phorepyrus Greek Orthodox Church in Gaza City. The following week, I learned from social media that his step-cousin had been killed in an Israeli airstrike on the 12th century building. My executive producer responded to my pitch via instant message. "Yeah, if he's willing. We also may have to potentially say we can't verify these things, though. Unless we can." I was stunned. Never in my nearly 6 years at the CBC had I ever been expected to verify the death of someone close to a guest, or to put a disclaimer in an interview that we couldn't fact-check some such claims. That's not a standard that producers had been expected to uphold, except apparently for Palestinians. Besides, even at that early stage, civil society had completely broken down in Gaza. I couldn't just call up the health authority or courthouse to ask if they email over a death certificate. I already had Farah's relative full name and had found a Facebook profile matching a commemorative photo he had posted on Instagram. This was already more verification than I had done for Israeli interviewees who had loved ones killed on October 7th. A few days later, a different program on the network aired an interview with the guest using passive language in the headline. Toronto man says relative was killed in airstrike that hit Gaza. I was being forced to walk a tightrope, trying to retain some journalistic integrity while keeping my career intact. In early November, I was asked to oversee production of an interview with a former U.S. official, now working for the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, a pro-Israel think tank. During the interview, he was allowed to repeat a number of verifiably false claims live on air, including that Hamas fighters had decapitated babies on October 7th, and that Gazan citizens could avoid being bombed if only they listened to the Israeli military and headed south. This was after civilian convoys fleeing southward via safe routes had been bombed by the Israeli military before the eyes of the world. As soon as I heard this second falsehood, I messaged my team suggesting the host push back, but received no response. Afterwards, the host said she had let the comment slide because time was limited, even though she could have taken the time from a less consequential story later on in the program. The majority of Palestinian guests I spoke to during the first 6 weeks of Israel's assault on Gaza all said the same thing. They wanted to do live interviews to avoid risk of their words being edited or their interview not being aired. These were well-founded concerns. Never before in my career had so many interviews been canceled due to fear of what guests might say. Nor had there ever been direction from senior colleagues to push a certain group of people to do a pre-taped interview. CBC told The Breach it categorically rejects the claim that interviews were routinely canceled. On another occasion in November, a Palestinian-Canadian woman in London, Ontario, named Reem Sultan, who had family trapped in the Strip, was scheduled for one such pre-taped interview. Because of her frustration over previous interviews that she had been given and coverage of her family situation being diluted, she asked if she could go live instead. When I asked the senior producer, he looked uneasy and said the interview should be canceled, citing that the guest had already been on the network that week. I agreed that it would be preferable to interview a new Palestinian voice and said I had contact information for a number of alternative guests. However, after canceling the interview with Sultan, the senior producer informed me that he didn't want another guest after all. Editing out genocide. Most shows on the network seem to avoid airing any mention of genocide in the context of Gaza. On November 10th, my senior producer pushed to cancel an interview I had set up with a Palestinian-Canadian entrepreneur, Khalid al-Sabawi. According to his pre-interview, a conversation that typically happens before the broadcastable interview, 50 of his relatives had been killed by Israeli soldiers. The part of the transcript that concerned the senior producer was al-Sabawi's claim that the Netanyahu government had publicly disclosed its intent to commit genocide. He also took issue with the guest's references to a documented history of racism and apartheid under Israeli occupation, as well as his suggestion that the Canadian government was complicit in their murder of Gazan citizens. The senior producer raised his concerns via email to the executive producer, who then CC'd one of the higher-up managers. The executive producer replied that it sounded like his statement was beyond opinion and factually incorrect. The executive manager's higher-up chimed in, saying she thought the interview would be too risky as a pre-tape or live interview. Despite the guest's position aligning with many UN experts and Western human rights organizations, the interview was canceled. CBC told The Breach the guest turned down our offer of a pre-taped interview, but al-Sabawi had said to the producers from the start that he would only do a live interview. In another instance, a Palestinian-Canadian guest named Sama el-Sabag, whose elderly father was then trapped in Gaza, had part of her pre-tape interview edited out before it went to air. She had used the word genocide and talked about the deliberate starvation of Palestinians in Gaza. The senior producer told me the edit was because of time constraints, but that producer and the host were overheard agreeing that the guests' unedited words were too controversial. CBC told The Breach it has not canceled interviews with Palestinians because they referenced genocide and apartheid. By November 2023, it was getting harder to ignore the brazen rhetoric coming from senior Israeli officials and the rate of civilian death, which had few precedents in the 21st century. But you wouldn't have heard about these things on our shows, despite a number of producers' best efforts. By early 2024, the International Court of Justice's hearings, and later its ruling that Israel refrained from actions that could plausibly constitute genocide, forcibly changed the discussion, and the word genocide finally made some appearances on CBC. But back in late October, I booked an interview with Adel Iskander, Associate Professor of Global Communication at Simon Fraser University, to talk about language and propaganda from Israeli and Hamas officials. The host filling in that day was afraid of complaints, was concerned about the guest wanting to be interviewed live, and judged him to be biased. Yet again, an interview was canceled. A secret blacklist? One Saturday in mid-October, I arrived at work shortly after the airing of an interview with a prominent Palestinian-Canadian lawyer and former spokesperson for the Palestinian Liberation Organization, Diana Batu. There had been a commotion, I was told. A producer from The National, the CBC's flagship nightly news and current affairs program, had apparently stormed into the newsroom during the interview, saying that Batu was on a list of banned Palestinian guests and that we weren't supposed to book her. I heard from multiple colleagues that the alleged list of banned Palestinian guests wasn't official. Rather, a number of pro-Israel producers were rumored to have drawn up their own list of guests to avoid. Later, I was told by the producer of the interview that after the broadcast, Batu's details had mysteriously vanished from a shared CBC database. By then, I had also discovered that the name and contact details for the Palestinian ambassador, Mona Abu-Maria, who had previously been interviewed, had likewise been removed. It didn't seem coincidental that both guests were articulate defenders of Palestinian rights. While producers distressed by the CBC's coverage of Gaza were speaking in whispers, pro-Israeli colleagues felt comfortable making dehumanizing comments about Palestinians in the newsroom. In one case, I heard an associate producer speaking disparagingly about guests' decision to wear a keffiyeh for an interview before commenting that the host knows how to handle these people. This guest had dozens of family members killed by the Israeli military in Gaza. It seemed the only Palestinian guest CBC was interested in interviewing was the sad, docile Palestinian who talked about their suffering without offering any analysis or solutions to end it. What they did not want was an angry Palestinian full of righteous indignation towards governments complicit in their family's displacement and murder. At this stage, I was starting to feel nauseous at work, and then one Saturday night, that sickness turned to anger. I had been asked to finish production on a pre-taped interview with a constructive dialogue researcher on incidents of campus hostilities over the war and how to bring young people together. The sort of interview CBC loves, as it's a way to be seen covering the story without actually talking about what's happening in Gaza. I carried out the task in good faith, writing an introduction leading with an example of anti-Semitism, and then another of anti-Palestinian hate, taking care to be balanced in my approach. But my senior producer proceeded to remove the example of anti-Palestinian hate, replacing it with a wishy-washing both sides example, while leaving the specific serious incident of anti-Semitism intact. He also edited my wording to suggest that pro-Palestinian protesters on Canadian campuses were on the side of Hamas. I overheard the host thank the senior producer for the edits on the basis that the incidents of anti-Semitism were supposedly worse. While the introduction of these biases into my script was relatively minor compared to some other double standards I have witnessed, it was a tipping point. I challenged the senior on why he made my script journalistically worse. He made up a bad excuse. I told him I couldn't do this anymore and walked out of the newsroom crying. Truth-telling, about CBC. That evening at home, the nausea and the anger dissolved, and for the first time in 6 weeks, I felt a sense of peace. I knew it was untenable to stay at CBC. At a team meeting the following week in mid-November, I said the things I had wanted to say since the start of Israel's assault on Gaza. I prefaced the conversation by saying how much I loved my team and considered some co-workers friends. I said the problems weren't unique to our team but across the CBC. But the frequency of Palestinian guests getting cancelled, the pressure to pre-tape this one particular group, in addition to the unprecedented level of scrutiny being placed on them, demonstrated a pattern of double standards. I said there seemed to be an unspoken rule about words like genocide. I pointed out that Arab and Muslim co-workers, especially those who were precariously employed, were scared of raising concerns, and that I and others had heard dehumanizing comments about Palestinians in the newsroom. The CBC told The Breach that there have been no specific reports of anti-Palestinian and Islamophobic comments in the newsroom for managers to respond to or follow up. I said that 2 decades since the US-led invasion of Iraq, it was widely acknowledged that the media had failed to do their jobs to interrogate the lies used to justify a war and occupation that killed 1 million Iraqis, and that as journalists we had a special responsibility to tell the truth, even if it was uncomfortable. A couple of co-workers raised similar concerns. Others rolled their eyes. CBC told The Breach that it doesn't recall there was anyone else who raised concerns in the meeting, but audio recordings show otherwise. The question of why there was nervousness around this issue came up, and I said one reason why we were adverse to allowing Palestinian guests to use the G word was because of the complaint campaigns of right-wing lobby groups like Honest Reporting Canada. Indeed, in just 6 weeks, there were already 19 separate instances of honest reporting going after CBC journalists, including a host on our team. Honest Reporting had also claimed responsibility for the firing at 2 other outlets of 2 Palestinian journalists, one of whom was on maternity leave at the time. All this had a chilling effect. Hosts and senior colleagues would frequently cite the threats of complaints as a reason not to cover Israel-Palestine. During my time there, a senior writer was even called into management meetings to discuss her supposed bias after an Honest Reporting campaign targeted her. Her contract was cut short. The policing of media workers' output reinforced existing institutional tendencies that ensured CBC rarely deviated from the narrow spectrum of legitimate opinions represented by Canada's existing political class. Certain CBC shows seemed to be more biased than others. The National was particularly bad. The network's primetime show featured 42% more Israeli voices than Palestinian in its first month of coverage after the October 7th Hamas attacks, according to a survey by The Breach. Although some podcasts and radio programs seem to cover the war on Gaza in a more nuanced way, the problem of anti-Palestinian bias in language was pervasive across all platforms. According to an investigation in The Breach, CBC even admitted to this disparity, arguing that only the killing of Israelis merited the term murderous or brutal, since the killing of Palestinians happens remotely. Images of children being flattened to death in between floors of an apartment building and reports of premature babies left to starve in incubators suggested otherwise. I spoke to many like-minded colleagues to see if there was any action we could take to push back on the tenor of our coverage, but understandably, others were reluctant to act, even collectively, out of fear of doing so would endanger their jobs. Some of those colleagues would have loved to have walked out, but financial responsibilities stopped them. There has been previous attempts at CBC to improve the public broadcaster's coverage of Israel-Palestine. In 2021, hundreds of Canadian journalists signed an open letter calling out biases in the mainstream media's treatment of the subject. A number of CBC workers who signed the letter were hauled into meetings and told they either weren't allowed to cover the subject or would have any future work on the issue vetted. A work friend later regretted signing the letter because she had got the sense that she had been branded as biased, leading to her pitches on Palestine being more readily dismissed. Smeared as anti-Semitic. In mid-November, after laying out my concerns to my colleagues, the regular weekly pitch meeting took place. It was then that I pitched the 2 genocide scholars before having to attend that virtual meeting with my executive producer, where he suggested I go on mental health leave, and yet another meeting with 2 managers who raised concerns over my pitch the next day. But the most unpleasant meeting with management was about to come. A week later, I was accused of anti-Semitism on the basis of something I didn't even say. According to a manager, someone had accused me of claiming that the elephant of the room was the rich Jewish lobby. CBC told The Breach that employees expressed concerns that what she said was discriminatory. The accusation was deeply painful because of my Jewish heritage and how my dad's life, and as a consequence my own, was profoundly damaged by anti-Semitism. But I also knew I could prove that it was baseless. I had recorded what I said, anxious that someone might twist my words to use them against me. What I had actually said, verbatim, was this: I just want to address the elephant in the room. The reason why we're scared to allow Palestinian guests on to use the word genocide is because there's a very, very well-funded, there's a lot of Israel lobbies. And every time we do this sort of interview, they will complain, and it's a headache. That's why we're not doing it. But that's not a good reason not to have these conversations. I stand by my statement. Honest Reporting Canada is billionaire funded. In December 2023, Honest Reporting bragged about having mobilized Canadians to send 50,000 letters to news outlets. The group also published a litany of attacks on journalists at CBC and other publications who've done accurate reporting on Palestine, and created email templates to make it easier for their followers to complain to publications about specific reporters. Other similar pro-Israel groups like the Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting in America and the Canary Mission employ similar tactics to try to silence journalists, academics, and activists who tell the truth about Israel-Palestine. I told the manager it was telling that instead of following up on the racist comment I had heard from colleagues about Palestinians, I was the one being accused of anti-Semitism and discrimination on the basis of words I hadn't even uttered. The banality of whitewashing war crimes. When I handed in my resignation notice on November 30th, I felt relieved that I was no longer complicit in the manufacturing of consent for a genocidal war of revenge. Despite my experience, I still believe in the importance of the national broadcaster to act in the public interest by reporting independently of both government and corporate interests, presenting the truth and offering a diverse range of perspectives. However, I believe that CBC has not been fulfilling these duties when it comes to its coverage of Israel-Palestine. I believe that in the future, historians will examine the many ways that CBC and the rest of mainstream media have all failed to report truthfully on this unfolding genocide, and in doing so, likely accelerated their delegitimization as trusted news sources. Before resigning, I raised the issue of double standards with various levels of the CBC hierarchy. While some members of management pledged to take my concerns seriously, the overall response left me disappointed with the state of the public broadcaster. After my appeal to my coworkers in mid-November, I had a phone conversation with a sympathetic senior producer. He said he didn't think my words at the meeting would interfere with my chances of getting the permanent staff job I had long dreamed of. Despite this assurance, I was certain that I wouldn't get it now. I knew I'd crossed the line for saying out loud what many at CBC were thinking, but couldn't say openly. Indeed, I wouldn't have spoken out if I hadn't already decided to resign. As a kid, I had fantasies of shooting Hitler dead to stop the Holocaust. I couldn't fathom how most Germans went along with it. Then, in my 20s, I was gifted a copy of Hannah Arendt's Eichmann in Jerusalem, a report on the banality of evil by anti-Zionist Israeli friends. I've been thinking a lot about that piece of reportage when trying to make sense of the liberal media's complicity in obfuscating the reality of what's happening in the Holy Land. As aren't theorized, those who go along with genocides aren't inherently evil. They're just often boring careerists. To be sure, while there are a number of senior CBC journalists who are clearly committed to defending Israel no matter its actions, many journalists just follow the path of least resistance. The fact that permanent full-time CBC jobs are in such short supply, combined with threats of looming cuts, only reinforces this problem. I still hear from former colleagues that pitch meetings are uphill battles. Some shows are barely covering Gaza anymore. Being a journalist is a huge privilege and responsibility, especially in a time of war. You're curating the news for the audience, deciding which facts to include and which to omit, choosing whose perspectives to present and whose to ignore. I believe that a good journalist should be able to turn their critical eye, not just on the news, but on their own reporting of the news. If you're unable to do this, you shouldn't be in the profession. I purposefully haven't given away identifiable information about my former colleagues. Ultimately, this isn't about them or me. It's part of a much wider issue in newsrooms across the country and the Western world, and I believe it's a moral duty to shed a light on it. If I didn't, I'd never forgive myself. Just as I'm not naming my colleagues, I'm writing this using a pseudonym. Although the spectrum of acceptable discourse continues to shift, the career consequences for whistleblowers on this issue remains formidable. I encourage fellow journalists who refuse to participate in the whitewashing of war crimes, especially those with the security of staff jobs, to speak to like-minded coworkers about taking collective action, to approach your union's steward and representative, and to document instances of double standards in your newsrooms and share them with other media workers. It was scary, but I have no regrets about speaking out. My only regret is that I didn't write this sooner. Keep leaving a hole in the market, CBC. Keep it up. Keep leaving a hole in the market, National Post. Keep it up. Right? Hi, hello. How you doing? I'm the Canadian commie. I'm here to do this. You don't want to talk about Israel? You don't want to talk about the genocide that's going on in Palestine? Hi, hello. Here at the Canadian Commie, we're here to actually analyze what's going on and actually analyze the truth. Big takeaway point for me, right, is the mention of the banality of evil, right? The trouble is that the system of capital is evil. It's an evil system. And so if you're a boring careerist in an evil system, then you are evil. That the people are not inherently evil, but the system is. So if you're just a boring careerist, then you end up doing genocides. It's as simple as that. So keep leaving that hole in the market. Keep ignoring us. Keep pretending like there isn't a very serious crisis boiling under the underbelly of your society. Keep ignoring the specter of communism. I'm sure it won't come to bite you in the ass. Eric, good to see you, my friend. I know, XD, that mental health leave comment really gets me. Baldy McNosehair, always a pleasure, my friend. Pan Chakosha, Pan, every time. Pan Chakosha. Gee, every time. Pan Chakosha. I can't even do it. Your name, Pan Chakosha. Your name is a tongue twister. Nova Scotia, good to see you. Compton, good to see you. And Resist over on Twitch. Absolute pleasure to see you guys. Hope you guys are doing really well out there. What a wild life we're living. What a wild world we're living in. Good opportunity at the end of an article. Please like, please share, please subscribe. Consider donating to my Patreon. If you are already a donator, consider upping your donation. Even $1 would help. Thank you so much for being here, guys. And please, as always, let somebody know I exist. If you see a thread or something of people being like, hey, I'm looking for good podcasters. Hi, hello, I'm a good podcaster. I'm a good place to go. thecanadiancommie.com. Easy to do. Thanks so much, guys. And thank you so much for being here. I know that you can listen to a lot of different stuff. I know there's a lot of people out there right now, but now more than ever. And so I feel very privileged that you've chosen me to spend your time with. Thank you guys for being here. Ugh. This kills me, man. This bullshit kills me. Like, what's so annoying is, like, the conservatives have this hell-bent idea that what we're going to do is defund the CBC, and it's like, why? Like, the CBC is, like, lockstep in line with you guys. Like, I don't understand why you actually think this is a thing, right? And it's just they want to get rid of a state broadcaster, so it's only the National Post that's left. It's only the National Post that's left. So, in other Israeli news, before we move on to other Canadian news, staying on topic, U.S. troops finish installation of a floating pier in Gaza. That's for sure going to be used for aid, right? That's for sure going to be used for aid. The U.S. Army announced on the 16th of May that it installed the temporary humanitarian pier. How embarrassing. Thank you for your donation, Baldy McNosehair. I appreciate that very much, my man. Thank you so much. I love that they're calling it a humanitarian pier. There's absolutely no way that this is going to be used for humanitarian aid. Like, this is being used to bring in construction vehicles so that they can start clearing through rubble and start building those front line. What am I talking about? The seafront houses that Trump Jr. was talking about, right? Or more specifically, oil rigs. That's what this is really about. They're going to use this as a launching off point to build offshore oil rigs and things like this, so that they can exploit the resources that they found in Gaza, which is a big reason why they're ethnically cleansing the region. Today at approximately 7:40 a.m. Gaza time, the United States Central Command personnel supporting the humanitarian mission to deliver additional humanitarian aid to Gazan civilians in need anchored a temporary pier at the beach in Gaza, CENTCOM said in a statement. It's so embarrassing that they're even trying to convince us that they're interested in sending aid. Like, they're trying to convince us that they're sending aid packages with one hand while they're literally arming Israel with billions of dollars of funding and weapons. Like, shut up. It's so fucking embarrassing. At this point, I just wish they'd take the mask off all the way, right? Like, at this point, it's this simpering, pathetic liberalism that kills me more than anything. Like, for God's sakes, let's get Trump in here, man. Trump's just going to take the mask off, and he's just going to be like, we're in there to get their oil. We found some natural gas reserves in there. We're going to get that oil. We're going to clear out those Palestinians. We're going to clear out all the rubble. We're just going to send them down, and they're just going to live in tents. You know, beautiful tents, large tents, strong American-made tents, right? And Trump's just going to talk that way, and it's going to be like, oh, finally somebody who's just talking about it truthfully and not trying to convince me that it's like, oh, we actually care. We do. We actually care about the Palestinians. We do. We care. Yeah. Like, no, it's going to be great. Let's get the guys in there that are like, this is the next step of the return of Jesus Christ. Once the Palestinians are clear of the Holy Land, we will be able to erect the unholy pentagram and sacrifice the goat, which will summon in the great dark Lord Cthulhu, ushering in the end of days, which will herald the return of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Which is not actually that far from what they actually believe. Contribute to Cradle's journalism. As part of this effort, no U.S. troops entered Gaza. Shut up. Shut up. Jesus Christ, dude. I don't know how they can say this shit with a straight face. Like, I don't know how they can say this shit, man. Like, it's just startling to... No U.S. troops entered Gaza. Yup, that's true. Trucks carrying humanitarian assistance... wank, 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 are expected to begin moving ashore in the coming days. Yeah, I bet. The United Nations will receive the aid and coordinate its distribution into Gaza, the statement added. Just like they're coordinating with all of the other ways that you can get into Gaza, right? Literally, I read an article last night. Yesterday's stream, I read an article about how the United States is complicit and Joe Biden is complicit in a famine in Gaza. and they're trying to convince me that this is a fucking a pier. You could just drive goods into Gaza. You don't need this pier to do that. That's embarrassing as shit. If you believe this, you are the most gullible person on the planet. This pier exists as a launching off point for them to build offshore drilling so that they can exploit the natural resources that they have found in Gaza. That is what this is about. And it's not about anything else. They literally found natural gas reserves, and they were like, we could exploit this natural gas if not for this group of, people, I guess we could call them human animals if we want to use the language they actually use. So let's just clear it out. Push it into, I don't know, Egypt, I guess. Who cares? We'll just starve them out. Ugh. Let's just get the concluding paragraph just for fun. In late April, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin admitted that it was possible that the U.S. forces operating the pier could be attacked. Not setting anybody up for a false flag operation, not at all. Austin also said troops would have the ability and authority to open fire into the besieged enclave to protect themselves. These people are psychopaths. These people are just dark, bleak, like Adolf Hitler level, Darth Vader level psychopaths. Yeah, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into Israel. What we're gonna do is we're gonna go into Palestine. We're gonna ethnically cleanse all the Palestinians out of an area, set up a bunch of colonies, settler colonialism. And when they shoot back at us for, ethnically cleansing them, we're going to say that we have a right to defend ourselves. We've got a right to defend ourselves, and we're going to fight back against them, and we're going to put them in concentration camps, little colonies, like we do, like we've always done everywhere we go. And then we're going to build infrastructure, and if the Palestinians shoot at that infrastructure that we built, then we're going to say that we're going to shoot back at them to defend ourselves. Like, you got to be a dimwit at this point to follow this line. Like, you got to just be absolutely the dumbest or evil. Like, that's possible too. So take a pick. Do you want to be a dumb dimwit, or do you want to be an evil person? And those are your only options that are remaining. Transylvanian, good to see you, my man. She went on to equate the Soviet Union with Nazi Germany by inventing the nonsense term totalitarian. Oh, no, I'm halfway through. Sorry. It's sad that Arendt was a fervent anti-communist, because the banality of evil does make a good, if oversimplified, point. As an anti-communist, she admits that fascism is a product of capitalist decay. I've noticed that as well, about that text. I read that text a long time ago, before I had encountered Marxism generally. But I think you're true. I think your analysis is correct. She went on to equate the Soviet Union with Nazi Germany by inventing the nonsense term totalitarian, which the SU never was, and which oversimplifies Nazi Germany and absolves people from complicity. Yeah, seems to be the case. Well, and it also is just like not an analysis of the system of capital, right? Like, it's like this childlike, like, this place is also passing laws, so it's just as bad. Like, what? What are you talking about? Like, they also have a government, so they're the same as the Nazis. Like, that's the level of discourse that we have these days. It's just straight up like, well, this place also has a prison, so they're just as bad as the Americans. They're just as bad. XD writes, I don't want to hear pro-genocide Lib Dems suddenly pretend to be anti-genocide because Trump is doing it. That's for sure what's going to happen, bro. No, that's absolutely what's going to happen. We here in the Democratic Party stand with the... They'll never say they stand with the people of Palestine. They'll never say that. Because, like, they're also Zionists, right? Like, they're all Zionists. They're all owned by the Israeli lobby. Like, to me, the most pathetic part about this whole conversation, like, the most pathetic part about this whole situation is how cheaply these politicians are being bought. right? It's not like these politicians are being bought for like billions of dollars, right? It's not like there's like a swing vote. It's not like what's his name? There was that swing vote guy, the hack Democratic loser idiot who was like a swing vote in the Congress for a little while. But it's not like that guy's being bought for like $500 million, right? It's literally like a donation for $10,000 to their campaign. And that's enough for them to be like, commit a genocide against the Palestinians. It's a good idea to purge the nation of the people, of the indigenous population, so that I can get enough money to put a down payment on a truck. Like, that's how pathetic this is. Like, it's not even like they're getting enough to buy a house. It's not even like they're getting enough to buy like a big super yacht or something. It's literally like a down payment on a GMC Jimmy. It's like, do you want to buy a big truck? Well, you better put a $10,000 down payment on that. Oh, okay, cool. Thank you. Well, thanks for supporting the genocide. Like, it is that baby brained, and like, America absolutely deserves what's coming for it, man. The more the populace is beginning to see how pathetic it is, right? And it is pathetic what's going on internally. Like, it would make sense. Like, what I feel like I've got an article. Like, I feel like I'm not talking. Yeah. No, this isn't it. Where was it? I had something here. Right? Breaking! This is from Americans for Tax Fairness. I love Americans for Tax Fairness, dude, because 20 years ago, like, I think it was these guys. There's so many organizations right now that are like, oh, wait, things have gone totally horribly bad, and they've completely changed their tune, right? The same guys who, like, 20 years ago were like, lowering taxes for the rich is a good idea, actually, because it'll let the job creators create jobs for everyone. And now people are like, we are literally living in like a dictatorship of capital. It's very straightforward and it's extremely obvious that's what's happening. Breaking! Just 50 billionaire families have already spent more than $600 million in the 2024 elections. Just for total clarity, though, like $600 million, chump change. Chump change for these losers, right? That's what I'm talking about. How cheaply this is all being done. How cheaply you're being betrayed for. Like, you're not being betrayed for, like, huge, massive sums. You're being betrayed for, like, oh, boy, I get a summer home. That's it. Like, that's it. Let's commit a massacre so I can have a cottage on the lake. Instead of paying their fair share in taxes, they're buying elections to rig the system on their behalf. We really, really need to tax billionaires. I got a message for you guys. Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. Like, not going to happen. This is something that's really killing me about the discourse. People are like, we need to stand up and support this policy. Fucking, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? You can support whatever policy you want to support. We need a basic income, universal health care. We should raise taxes on the rich. What we need to invest in education and infrastructure. None of that's going to happen. None of that is going to happen. 0%. You live in a fucking dictatorship. You live in a corporate oligarchy if you like it. You live in an inverted totalitarian system, if you want to use Sheldon Wollen's term, right? Whatever you want to call the system that you live in, the way it's going to act is it's going to go, oh, wow, that's what you want? Okay, well, fuck you. And none of that's going to happen. Like, that's why what's required and what we should actually be doing and what we should be doing seriously is revolution. That a revolution is the only answer at this point, because the system doesn't give a fuck what you think about what policy. It doesn't care. It's going to look you dead in the eye, and it's going to say, oh, is that going to make you vote for me? Sure. Yeah, absolutely I care about healthcare. Sure. And then they're going to do fucking nothing. Because they don't care about you. They just want your goddamn vote. And after they've got your vote, they forget about you for 4 years. Right? Except when they stand in front of some, like, campaign thing and they look at their cue card and they go, education, Black Lives Matter? I guess. Okay, Black Lives Matter. Like, none of it's going to happen because the system is completely corrupted. You're owned by capitalists. Period. Full stop. In a system that isn't actually capitalism anymore, but became feudalism a decade ago. Like, it's over. It's finished. It's kaputski. They're not going to negotiate. Zero negotiation. Absolutely none whatsoever. It is all exclusively and only at this point gaslighting, lying, deception, omission, obfuscation, and my favorite one, just beating the shit out of you. That's all that's going to happen from now on. Period. Full stop. Nothing else. And if you think something else is going to happen, you're fucking dumbass. You're just the dumbest person in the room by a lot. Like, by a fucking lot. What? We should support reforms to the system. The system of capitalism is pretty good by itself, you know. We just need to support reform. You're the stupidest person alive. Like, you're so stupid. I don't even know why you're talking. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. And it couldn't be getting more obvious. Americans for Tax Fairness is literally like, how we should be taxing these guys, eh? That's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And I don't know why anybody's fooling themselves into thinking it's going to happen. Look at how hard Joe Biden's literally like, well, you know, maybe we should think about perhaps proposing over the 10 years, perhaps maybe the idea that billionaires are supposed to perhaps maybe pay 25% of wealth earned over $100 billion. Perhaps maybe we should think and contemplate about that, maybe, perhaps. And that's not even happening. Like, I just don't know what world people are living in anymore. Like, I just don't know, like, where people's heads are at with this stuff. Like, we should be organizing along revolutionary lines, and that's what we should be doing exclusively. Like, for God's sakes, like, the vast majority of the money, $416 million, is going to Republicans or conservative groups, hell-bent on renewing the Trump tax cuts for the wealthy and slashing vital services for working people. Like, how do you think this is going to go, guys? The Kochs, Mellons, and Waltons are among the top 10 donors who have alone made over half the contributions, $359 million. Let's be clear. I love it. See, this is what sets me off. We really, really need to reform our tax code and campaign finance systems. This is a serious thing that's for sure gonna happen. No, it's not. Like, no, it's not. Your system got sold out to a group of psychopaths. It's over. It's finished. It's complete. They're not going to suddenly go, oh, doopsie oopsie, you're right. Oh, all the Americans got together and voted. Oh, they wrote on a piece of paper that they're very upset with us. These guys are literally building mega yachts while people are, like, dying in the streets. These guys are literally, like, working 83-year-old women to death while, like, going to Jeffrey Epstein pedophile orgies. Like, it's just wild to watch any organization stand up and still talk this way. As if there is any hope in the electoral system at all. As if you're definitely, what we're going to do is we're going to lobby the government. And that's 100% going to get it done. Dumbasses. Like, just so stupid. Dragon Fruit writes, I saw a video on TikTok where Israeli citizens were destroying humanitarian aid for Palestinians, and the IDF didn't bother to show up. Yeah, of course. No. Like, why would the IDF show up? The Israelis are doing what the IDF wants them to do. I'm just not shocked by any of this shit anymore. Nothing's shocking to me anymore. Like, there's nothing they can do. The only thing that might actually shock me is if they like start crucifying people. Like literally like parading people around on crosses. Being like, haha, we killed them, haha. Like that would shock me. Okay? Anything below that, yeah, they destroyed aid. Right? Like, they're building a port for, you think if we say humanitarian aid, they'll believe us? They will? We're building a port for humanitarian aid? Like, alright. Moving away from Israel. Just like final point. I've said it several times. It's just like, I just think it needs to be drilled into people's heads over and over again. We should say it to everybody all the time, constantly. If they're willing to do it to the Palestinians, they're willing to do it to you. Like, I don't know why you think you're special. I don't know why you think you've got a little sacred, holy little bubble around you. That just because they're white and you're white, I guess you think you're safe. If they're going to do it to the Palestinians, they're going to do it to you. Right? And when they do it to you, you're going to complain about it, and they're just going to go, get a job. You're just jealous. From the National Post. Canada's living standards alarmingly on track to be the lowest in 40 years. I wonder if there's a correlation here. I wonder if handing billions upon billions upon billions of dollars to war and psychopathic rich people so they can build yachts has anything to do with the declining standard of living in Canada. Let's see what the National Post, Canada's furthest right newspaper, basically a fascist newspaper, has to say about it. You've seen those signs that say, in emergency, break glass. Well, it's time to break the glass. Bank of Canada's Carolyn Rogers said in March. If Canada's per capita gross domestic product does not recover in 2024, it won't. The decline since mid-2019 may be the longest in the last 4 decades, a new study has found. Despite claims to the contrary, living standards are declining in Canada. Grady Munro, policy analyst at the Fraser Institute and co-author of Changes in Per-Person GDP, 1985 to 2023. This is what I'm talking about. The Fraser Institute is a hack billionaire-funded organization of, like, capitalist losers. These are the people, if anyone can be pegged for the total betrayal of the working class in Canadian society, it's the frauds at the Fraser Institute. These illiterate, clueless boobs. These guys are turning around and being like, things are actually declining. I guess it turns out that we're a bunch of illiterate frauds and we didn't know what the fuck we were talking about for 4 fucking decades. Released on Thursday, the study found that from April 2019 to the end of 2023, inflation-adjusted per-person GDP declined from $59,905 to $58,111, or by 3%. I just love that this, like, inflation-adjusted per-person GDP, like all this blah, 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 blah. Like, do you actually think the average person is making $58,000 in Canada? Do you? Do you think the middle of the pack is $58,000? Things are just so fucking skewed and overwhelming. It's like, one guy has $300 billion, but if we even that out amongst the whole population... This decline is exceeded only by the decline in 1989 to 1992. And I love it. Now, we're going to have a major decline. This decline was exceeded previously in 1989 to 1992, and then also in 2008 to 2009. So, you know, like twice before in each subsequent decade. You know, the way the system of capital actually works goes through the boom bust cycle. So, you know, it's just in this constant state of decline, and we just keep pretending like everything's normal. The study assessed changes in quarterly per-person GDP, focusing on periods of decline and recovery. The boom bust cycle. I love, they've just built it into the way they think. It's normal. This is totally normal that societies collapse and go to ash and burn, and then we harvest the remains and send it upwards into the into the wealthy class, and everybody else just has to deal with that. This is just normal. This is how societies work. Including length, depth, and recovery time. It found Canada experienced 9 such periods between 1985 and 2023. Stable system. Strong, stable growth over time, you guys. Definitely a good system that we should 100%. Literally, in my lifetime, the society has gone into decline 9 times, according to this report. In my lifetime. You just need to get a better job. You just need to get a better job. The 3 most severe periods, based on length and depth, were quarter 2, 1989 to quarter 3, 1994. 6 years. 6 whole years of decline. Normal. Quarter 3, 2008 to 2011. That's the housing market crash, right? Again, totally normal. We gave $200 billion to people and said, don't do it again. And quarter 2, 2019 to 2022, COVID, right? COVID, which we responded to like a bunch of jackals. The decline starting in quarter 2, 2019 is unique as it briefly recovered, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and that's COVID. While Canada's GDP has grown in recent years, once again mentioning that GDP is a terrible way to measure an economy, right? You can literally just have 2 billionaires trade a house back and forth 100 million times, and there's your GDP growth. Driven by high population growth and labor supply, GDP per person has fallen. The latest decline, which comprises 18 fiscal quarters, is already the second longest in the last 40 years, surpassed only by the other massive decline. If not stabilized in 2024, the decline could be the steepest and longest in 4 decades, the study warns. So, have we been in decline longer than we've been in growth? Right? Is that how this system actually works? That if we actually do the math, is it literally just decline, then we have a spike up? We have one spike up every so often where billionaires make a lot of money? The severity of the decline in living standards should be a wake-up call for policymakers across Canada to immediately enact fundamental policy reforms to help spur economic growth and productivity, says Jason Clemens, study co-author and executive vice president of the Fraser Institute. It is the Fraser Institute after all, so their ideas are going to be, we need to gouge the poor again. We need to make the poor. We need to make the poor poorer. Baldy McNose here with another donation of $5. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I like this trend you're setting, Baldy. I like it. Let's go. Off-topic question: why are pennies not a thing in Canada anymore? I forgot what the reasoning is. Because they were annoying. That's all. It is actually the truth. Everybody was just like, "Fuck! What are you talking about pennies? What are you talking about? Nobody gives a shit about pennies. Nobody cares about pennies, dude." When they enacted I think there is other reasons. We were using some kind of metal in the pennies, and they were just like, we could use this metal for other things. We don't need pennies. But the opinion of the entire populace is that when they passed that legislation, literally everybody went, "Oh, thank God." Right? Every cashier, everyone who buys things, literally is just like, "Oh God, thank Christ, no more pennies." There's even movements now that are just like, what are you talking about? Nickels and dimes? Who cares? Quarters are basically off the table. Now with inflation, quarters are the new pennies. It's just nobody gives a shit. That's really the bottom line. Everybody was just like, these are annoying, fuck them. And that's kind of what it landed on. Everybody's just like, yeah, fuck off. It's like when everybody finally gets their shit together and overturns daylight savings time. Right? Everybody all at once simultaneously is going to go, "Oh God, thank Christ." Because daylight saving time is the stupidest idea I've ever heard of in my life. Per Statistics Canada data, labor productivity has followed a similar pattern. Yeah, no shit. If you impoverish your society and tell them full-time jobs no longer pay rent, why should they participate? Right? And the Fraser Institute's solutions are going to be, let's make life harder for Canadians. The fourth quarter of 2023 marked the first time productivity increased since the beginning of 2022, following 6 quarters of declining or stagnant labor productivity. So, according to Marxist theory, which capitalists are illiterate, I'm surprised they're even talking about productivity, frankly. This is the sign of a dying economy, right? That an economy a society and an economy that's working is one whose productive capacity is improving over time and increasing over time. That you want your productivity in just a state of total growth. That's the one thing that Marxists actually do believe has an infinite growth potential, is productivity, not consumption, right? Productivity. Yeah. At my family store, we accumulated so many dimes and nickels we just never use. Yeah. Send them my way, XD. Collect all those dimes and nickels and send them my way. In a speech in March, Carolyn Rogers, Bank of Canada Senior Deputy Governor, called for improved labor composition, not compensation, composition, enhanced multi-factor productivity, automation, and increased investment in capital. Job creators. We need the job creators to make more jobs to boost productivity. These people are illiterate. They don't know anything about economics, and they're the people at the helm of the economy. You've seen those signs that say, in emergency, break glass, where it's time to break the glass, Rogers says. And of course what she means is it's time to break the working class. It's time to smash labor. That's what it is. Because that's always the solution, right? Make labor pay more. We'll raise a capital gains tax of 0.25% over 3 years in order to convince the working class that we actually care about something with the rich and blah, blah, blah. But the truth is that we're going to break the back of the working class like we always have and always will and will continue to do, because it's the only solution we actually have. She stressed improved access to training and reskilling programs. Notice how she's not saying, like, hey, maybe we should pay workers. Maybe if we wanted to improve our economy, we could do it by improving our economy. Man, everybody's poor and broke and doesn't have any incentive to actually make money in the society. Maybe we should, I don't know, give them more money. No, that's not going to work. People aren't incentivized by the profit motive. Says a person who literally worships money in a system that says the profit motive is the only reason anybody does anything. And ensuring new entrants, slaves, are well prepared by educational institutions. Well prepared by educational institutions. These people are out of touch with reality, man. That's great. Literally, she's standing up and being like, we got to make sure that our educational facilities are preparing our... Like, what are you talking about? Nobody's prepared. There's no preparation. That's going to help boost productivity. I know what we need to do. The same thing we've been doing all along. That'll do it. As well as leveraging the skills of new immigrants effectively, rather than being stuck in low-wage jobs. Rogers added that support for small and medium-sized enterprises, which lack economies of scale, would increase competition within various sectors and drive innovation and efficiency. Certainly not incentivize big fish to just eat them up. You know, the way the system of capital actually works. Like, it's really difficult for me to believe that these guys are this dim-witted, right? Like, they're literally watching the entire system that they have been espousing, this religious ideology that they've been pretending is a economy. They've been watching their theory fail, right? Like, if I want to be generous to these guys, right? And let's be generous, okay? Let's be really nice and sweet and generous, okay? They have an economic theory. I know, right? Like, what a joke, but hear me out. They actually have an economic theory, in the same way that phrenologists have a scientific theory. We've got somebody over there on Twitch. New commenter, I just want to talk to you because I'm worried that people come in and say something and then are like, this guy's not responding, so I'm not going to stay. Lunos444. The cousin of the beast. 444. Hello, I'm a casual Twitch politics follower. Saw some stuff online and was wondering if I could ask a random off-topic questions. No problem if not. Yeah, go ahead, dude. Random off-topic is my cup of tea. I can feel it. I can feel it. I'm in a zany place right now. It's zany up here right now. I can feel it. I'm definitely like, I have awareness of myself. And in this moment, the word I use to describe the energy that I have and that I am emitting is zany. Not erratic. Maybe a little erratic. Okay, so let's be nice to these people. Like, let's be nice to these total losers, right? Like, who have an economic theory in the way that phrenologists have a scientific theory, right? Or the way that, like, flat earthers have a scientific theory. The way to organize a society is through the profit motive. That people are rational actors who are self-interested, operating in a free market, and are incentivized primarily, and in many cases exclusively, by the profit motive. So they worship money like we do. They're just as selfish as we are. And they love chaos as much as we do, right? That's their scientific theory. Well, it's failed. Just like phrenology failed. Just like flat eartherism failed. It failed. And so now what we're watching is we're watching a group of people who are no longer scientists. They're not social scientists. They're not interested in being social scientists. And we're watching these people confront the natural consequences of their failed scientific theory of the profit motive. And they don't know what to do. And so they just keep regurgitating the same dumb shit. Because they don't have other theories and they don't have other ideas. Because all of the other ideas and theories that actually work and are actually correct, they've been paid to ignore on purpose. They wouldn't be in the positions they were in if they were like, yeah, we got to make sure that everybody has a shelter and food, and that's at the lowest possible price. And in fact, actually, we should probably make it so that stuff is like almost free, right? Almost completely available to the populace, because that'll give the populace the footing they need in order to participate meaningfully in a wider economy, right? Like, there's a fact that's true. If you give people food and shelter, then they'll have food and shelter. Did you know that? Right? If you don't want people to live in poverty, then you should take them out of poverty. But no, they've got to couch everything in this dim-witted, dumb fuck religious ideology called capitalism that they've got going on, where they're saying, like, literally, we just need to retrain people. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, because that's been working out. There's no big, gigantic, long, massive history of training people for jobs that are obsolete the second they graduate. That's not a serious problem that has definitely been happening. There's absolutely no connection and no integration between the education system and the industries they're being trained for, because the education system is designed as a profit motive. So you have a bunch of frauds, shysters, con artists who are selling a product instead of actually educating the populace because they're following the profit motive, right? That the whole thing is structured like a pyramid scheme. So reskilling programs, well, that's been failing. Has not been working. Ensuring new entrances are well prepared by educational institutions. What the fuck are you talking about? What a dumbass thing to say. And that would help boost productivity. It never has. It literally never has. You've been saying this for 40 years. My entire life you've been saying this shit. Has not worked. 0%. Stop following a religious ideology. As well as leveraging the skills of new immigrants effectively. rather than being stuck in low-wage jobs. But who's going to work those low-wage jobs if not for the slaves that you bring into your society? Lunos writes. I'm really curious. Lunos. You got me hooked. With the little alien smiley face too. You got me hooked. I'm okay, cool. So I saw some screenshots of a Discord argument between Hassan and a guy. Okay. I am personally a fan of Hassan, but I feel the guy claiming that he was experiencing racism as a white guy did have a point. Oh. Content, calm down. Content, calm down. I think racism towards minority in America is far worse. But I think saying that it's impossible to be racist towards white person is just absurd to me. It's weird because I align with Hassan on every other view other than this. Am I crazy for this take? Basically, Hassan said you cannot be racist to white people when the guy said he had racist experiences when younger. So, let me be really clear. It is absolutely the case that a white person can confront the natural consequences of racism. Okay? Which is that the people who are experiencing racism hate the people who are projecting that racism. Okay? Racism is not a one-to-one individualistic thing. That's not what it is. Right? That what it actually is the white population of America and the West generally creating a category of human that they call white, and then rejecting or suppressing or pushing down, oppressing other groups who are not white. Right? That's what racism actually is. It's not a one guy saying one thing to some other person. That's not what it is. That racism is a system and a philosophy. And it's a system of thought. And the white person who experiences the consequences of this, right? Well, he's not experiencing reverse racism. Okay? That's not what's happening. He's experiencing the natural consequences of a racist system and a system of racism. And that natural consequence is that the oppressed people don't like it. That oppressed people of color, which is a designation we created, treat us badly for it. Right? And the people who are the least aware, the most privileged in the society, the people who are least aware of the system of oppression, the people who are unaffected by the system of oppression, who have the privilege to walk through life without it, when they are confronted by the natural consequences of that system, attempt to rationalize it by saying this is reverse racism. There's no such thing. It's just racism. But it's not racism towards white people. It's the oppressed minorities responding to a racist system in exactly the way that a person should. In exactly the way that a person, that you should expect a person to do so. Like, if you take your boot and you put it on someone's back and you press them down to the ground, and you grind your boot into their back, and then they cry about it and yell at you and throw some dirt at you or whatever they can grab on the ground, you don't get to say, hey, that's reverse racism or reverse stepping boots on backs. How dare you fight back? Right? Now, that's not to say that that white person's feelings aren't hurt. Okay? That's not to say that that white person doesn't have, oh, I didn't like that. Oh, that made my heart hurt. Oh, I have emotions and feelings. And I, as an individual person, individually feel as though I am not a racist person and feel as though I am rooting for all people to do well in the world as an individual person. So the solution is to recognize that people are responding to systems. You're going to find on this channel over and over again, repeatedly over and over again, you're going to hear me talk about systems, right? We are part of systems. We exist in systems. We are not dealing with one another on one-to-one individualistic levels, even though it might feel that way sometimes. And it's especially bad because you've been trained to think that way, that the system of capital wants to atomize you and separate you from anything that makes you feel as though you're part of a larger whole, because then they can isolate you like a cult would and sell you products, right? They can convince you that your own ability to change your own personal environment is the most important thing. Content writes, racism is prejudice plus power plus privilege. And I want you to know, Lunos, right now, that's very reserved of Content right now. I need you to know. I'm proud of you, Content. I'm so proud of you. You can do it, Content. You can do it. I believe in you. I believe in you. Lunos continues. I feel like that's almost like having a scenario where there is a man abusing his wife, and then one day the wife snaps and randomly punches the husband in the face. You wouldn't say that is not violence, because it clearly is, but it pales in comparison to what she had to go through herself. Yeah, now you're bringing up the patriarchy. Like, that's what you're bringing up, right? That a patriarchal society would say of that situation, well, she was wrong for hitting him. Because doesn't she know she's supposed to submit to her man? And that if the man abuses her, well, that's just part of the deal, right? That men that's just, boys are going to be boys, right? So you wouldn't accept that line of thinking, that it's reasonable that she would hit back, right? It's reasonable that she would hit back. Yeah, literally October 7th. Thank you, XD. That's right. So Lunos continues. Wait, so what if a Chinese person, XD, calm down. I've got you guys pegged, man. I got you guys fucking pegged. So what if a Chinese person decides to go to Europe for vacation? And let's say they stop by Germany. You're painting a real picture here, Lunos. I need you to know that. And while they are walking down the street, they decide... So they, in this situation, is Chinese person. Which... already we need to, like, a Chinese person is going to vacation in Germany. I mean, and then there's, like, the experience of, like, you get that the European powers tried to colonize China too, right? Okay. And while they're walking down the street, they decide to harass someone for the color of their skin and say a bunch of derogatory things regarding them being white. Would we not categorize that as racism? Again... it's the... Where did I find this guy? He's on Twitch, XD. He's on Twitch. Anyone can come in here. Did you know that? And I think that Lunos is handling himself reasonably. I think that this is pretty reasonable. Right? This is why I'm here. Yeah. That's literally what happened to Korean women in Germany. like, Germany is an interesting choice to choose here, given Germans, you know, Germany's history. You know? Like, Germany has a history of, you know, rounding up minority groups and, you know, putting them into gas chambers. So, like, I would describe the scenario that you have put forward as a bit odd. Like, Chinese man goes to Germany to belittle, to go after German man. Like, it's sort of an odd story. But, again, we're responding to a system, right? These are systems that are in place. And the system of white supremacy, which is 100% alive and well in Western culture, the way the West acts in many situations in geopolitics can be easily explained by the theory of white supremacy, right? The whole concept of manifest destiny, the whole concept that America can go wherever it likes in the world and spread liberal democracy wherever it wants. Like, I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm saying violence is violence the same way racism is racism. There are degrees to severity, but we can still call a spade a spade. Okay, violence is not violence, right? Like, what I mean by that is, like, if I tell you this story, okay? Man A shoots man B. And that's all you know. All you know is man A shoots man B. Okay? Then you can stand up and be like, well, man A is obviously, like, you shouldn't shoot people. Right? Man A is wrong. You shouldn't shoot people. Terrible. Awful. We should go after man A, and man A should have to pay reparations or something, right? And they should have to go to jail. Man A shot man B. How dare he? Right? Okay. So violence is violence, right? But then we find out that man B has been sending death threats to man A. Man B has been shooting a gun at man A's house for years. Man B has been threatening him in person, has been attacking him, has been trying to hit him with a car. And then finally one day man B charges at man A, and man A pulls out a gun and shoots him. Violence is violence. Violence is violence. Man A should go to jail, right? Violence is violence. Man A shot man B, right? Like, we don't put people in prison for self-defense. We don't put people in prison for defending themselves. And the West has a pretty nasty concept, which can be cleanly articulated. And I really need you to hear this phrase, because the second you hear it and put it into your consciousness, you're going to see it everywhere. The West has this really nasty habit of saying, how dare they fight back? That's really what the affront is. That's really what that German person is affronted by. That's really what that white guy is angry about. That's really what it is. How dare they fight back? Don't they know? Don't they know that they're the inferior sub-race? A term that we ourselves are responsible for inventing and maintaining. Don't they know that they should just remain silent and do what they're told as the inferior people? Don't they know that? How dare they fight back? Yeah. Eggsy, so this Lunos guy's point, if a Chinese person did that, it will cause an uproar among actual racists. All Chinese will be collectively blamed, and that incident will be milked for anti-CCP values. Yeah, yeah. This was literally what an old racist Tory British pianist did. The whole drama around the mall piano. Yeah, thank you, XD. Ben asks, and then we'll return to you, Lunos. I'm not going to ignore you. Do any of your family members take issue with your political views? No, no, it hasn't driven any wedges into my. I think that certain members of my family are kind of bewildered by what it is that I'm currently doing, but I don't think they're bewildered by that because of my political views. Because my political views are reasonable. And when they question my political views, I can explain myself pretty cleanly and clearly, right? With like sources and shit. There are obviously disagreements, as there is in any family, but I wouldn't describe as anything I've seen as taking issue. Like, no one in my family has really been like, don't you know that Stalin killed 100 bajillion, trillion, frillion? And I mean, I think that's because most of my family, like my father, I would describe as pretty conservative up until fairly recently because world events happened. And as my father and I have been talking, I think more and more he's been seeing that, like, oh yeah, like there's trouble. And he can see it in his own life, and he can experience it in his own life, and he can see, like, my father was betrayed by neoliberal capital. Massively betrayed. Like, the story of my family is that we immigrated from Ireland, went to Manitoba, started a farm. My grandfather, like, the Sanderson family did fairly well farming, actually. There are farmers who sold the farm for millions of dollars. My grandfather's farm didn't do so well, and so he moved over into tractor repair. Initially started as a junkyard, and there's a more nuanced story to this, but that's basically it. Tractor repair, and started a tractor repair business. At the height of the business, they had 10 men on the payroll, maybe 9 men on the payroll, and they were doing tractor repair for Manitoba, and they were doing very well by themselves, right? Entrepreneurial capital, right? The capitalist spirit. Pick yourself up by your bootstraps. You got to do what you got to do. Capitalism, right? Then the neoliberal period came and destroyed their business. Destroyed it. Like, as thoroughly as a business can be destroyed. And I think my dad did pretty well by the decline and did pretty well by things. But he was destroyed by the system of neoliberal capital, and he watched it happen internally in his own business. He was betrayed completely. Then the 2008 financial collapse wiped him out. So he was betrayed again. So he used to be a conservative. And I think that he is still susceptible to conservative thinking because that's his upbringing and his business acumen and all of that. But he's aware, acutely aware of what the system of capital has done to him. And I think that now, as he's gotten into his retirement age, because he's fortunate enough to be in a position where he can retire, he's listening to me. And he's listening to what I'm saying about the system of capital. And he's hearing the words that I'm saying. And he's going, yeah, that does resonate. These things did happen. But I've never had a confrontation in my family for any of this. I believe you. I believe you, Compton. I believe you. I believe you. You can do it. You can do it. Interpersonal racism is still bad. People are still individuals as well as being part of a system. The hyper-individualization of the society is part of the religious ideology of capital, right? That there's two versions of capitalism. There's the scientific analysis of capitalism, which is Marxism, right? The observation of how capitalism operates and the things that it does, right? But if you actually do that and you actually critique capitalism along those lines and actually treat it as a social science, then you're at least a realist. if not a Marxist. But you're definitely not a capitalist. To actually say I'm a capitalist, you have to believe in a religious ideology. And a big part of that religious ideology is believing in the sacredness of the individual. The hyper-individualization is a big, big part of the religious ideology. And that religious ideology insists that all men are islands, in fact. That you are not actually affected by society. You are not actually affected by systems. You are not actually part of that. That a single individual can, in fact, overcome the forces of the universe. This hyper-individualistic idea. And so, like, there's a technically true aspect to the statement that you're making, but hyper-individualists and capitalists kind of want them to be equal. Like, capitalists want to believe that their individuality is more important than the collective. And it's dramatically not. It's dramatically not. Like it's not at all close at all. Even a tiny itsy bitsy little bit. And so what happens is that people want to blame individuals for large systemic issues. And the reason why that wants to be done is because if you can blame individuals, then you don't actually need to analyze the systems that are benefiting you. Right? You don't actually need to critique the systems that are benefiting you. You don't actually need to confront those systems. You can just be like, that guy did reverse racism, what an asshole. Can't he just be nice? Can't we all just get along like Martin Luther King said? Right? Instead of actually acknowledging that, like, yeah, you know, we live in a white supremacist society for which I benefit. And it makes sense that people would be frustrated. And perhaps on a one-to-one level, it might be unfortunate. You're just the butt. Right? But to try to hyper-individualize that situation and pretend it's like, well, that guy's just an asshole, well, then that's just maintaining the system of white supremacy. And it's not actually acknowledging what's actually going on. Which, incidentally, again, I don't really blame people for, because we are well-trained to be this dumb. We are well-trained to be hyper-individualists. We are well-trained to exclude thinking about the benefit of the whole or the benefit of the collective. We are well trained in that regard. And we don't actually receive any training that says, hey, maybe we should think and act like a collective. Maybe we should try to collaborate and cooperate. Maybe we should train people, like basic exercises, just basic things. Just trust falls, right? Singing in choirs. Like, I know that might sound silly to you, but, like, when was the last time you actually did a collective activity? Like, really think about it. When was the last time you actually did, for real, a collective activity? Something where you all simultaneously had to do something all at once. You may never have done that. The closest that we have to it is sports. But sports are like a perversion of the idea. Because everything is hyper-individualistic in sports. Yeah, if we believe too much in that individuality, society would fall apart. I agree with that. Well, that puts you ahead of the game, Lunos, if you ask me. Like, I think, like, I feel so strongly. I have a theory about the religion of capital. I call it the unholy trinity of the capitalist death cult, right? And it's three prongs. It's a trinity, so it's 3 prongs. The first prong is the worship of money. That capitalists are literally willing to sell the goose that lays the golden egg if it increases the amount of paper dollars that their government prints in the first place. So if they can get access to funny money, they'll literally poison the well. Right? That's money worship. Right? That's taking a tool that is designed to facilitate trade and elevating it to the status of a god. And that's 100% what the capitalists have done and what capitalist societies do. The almighty dollar is a god. And pillar number 2, I call it the worship of the self. And within it is this concept of hyper-individuality. The concept that a single individual is more powerful than God himself. Single individual is more powerful than the forces of the universe themselves. And that you are the author of your own fate, and that kind of thinking, which is just like, what are you fucking talking about? That's falsifiable in a second. I can falsify that. I can falsify that in 10 seconds, maybe even less. There are people who are born with mental handicaps. There you go. Entire theory debunked completely. No, a single individual is not in fact more powerful than God. But that's one of the running theories, right? And you can see how much we love that idea based on how our society has responded to things like The Wolf of Wall Street. That The Wolf of Wall Street is absolutely a cautionary capitalist tale. But people watched that movie and were like, I love that character. That guy's great. Yeah, I'm not going to leave. Yeah, I'm not going to leave. Yeah, screw people over, get as much money as possible. This is how we should be. What a role model. Like Andrew Tate. The only people who could take a guy like Andrew Tate seriously are people who are just hyper individualistic worshippers of individualism. Like, the guy's a clown. So clearly a clown. And anybody who is in any kind of collective mindset would just be like, this guy is a poison. Like, this is what we're talking about when we're talking about toxic masculinity. Like, this guy's a poison. And that toxicity comes from the belief that I am more powerful than God. I am more important than you. I am more important than the society. I am more important than I have status and privilege that supersedes your entire life's experience. Right? Like, it's clownish. But it's one of the pillars of the capitalist death cult. And then the final one is the worship of chaos, which they tell you explicitly. The invisible hand of the free market will come and solve all of our problems. We have to let the market decide is no different than saying let chaos reign. It's the exact same statement. And they say it straight to your face, with a straight face, and expect you to take it seriously and not look at them and go, you guys are demons. Wow, what a demonic ideology you're following. Let chaos reign? Jesus Christ. Luna says, I'm about to go work on some things, but I really do appreciate your response, even if we do disagree a little bit. I dropped the follow, so hopefully I pop back in the future. We can talk again. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being here, Lunos. I'm going to let you know, Lunos, if you're still in the chat, I'm happy with the way you handled yourself. Some people come in here with their cock out and say basically the things that you just said, but with this definite attitude of like, I'm a smart person and you're a dumbass. So I really respect the way you handled yourself. Thanks for being here, bud. Compton writes, why is interpersonal relations supposed to be the main focus here? Why is that relevant at all? Right, because what a white man thinks is the most important thing, Compton, don't you know? Come on. What I think matters the most. Capitalism annihilated our individuality. We never had the luxury of being special, unique flowers. Only a good soil can create diverse and beautiful flowers that can be appreciated individually. Yeah, that's a pretty good observation, I actually think, that like capitalism promotes the idea of individuality while simultaneously destroying that idea. That's something worth exploring for sure. Lunos continues, thanks. He says, LOL, thanks, with big smiley faces. It's very nice of him. Yeah, I try to be. I have my moments where I get unhinged. Yeah. Yeah, dude, me too. But I try to save that for when I'm dealing with other people that are unhinged. Usually people on the left are pretty chill. Well, that's nice. That's nice. Yeah, I don't tolerate unhinged people for very long. Like, once somebody reveals that they're not interested in responding rationally to evidence, that's my pretty hard line. I don't spend too much time talking to people who show me that they're not interested in responding to evidence. So climate change deniers, you're just not responding to evidence. Flat earthers, right? You're just not responding to evidence. And then, of course, if you're a bigot, right? Like, if you come in here and you start talking, it's trans people, man. It's all trans people. People want to come in here and talk to me about trans people. There's this hyper fixation on trans people. And I think I know why, right? Just like the gay issue. Here's a great article. Former white nationalist R. Derek Black has come out as trans. What do we say, guys? Like, what have we been saying the whole time, right? The people who fight the most virulently against a social issue regarding sexuality especially, it seems, are the people who are likely struggling the most against their own internal realization, right? That they're projecting out their fear, they're projecting out their anxiety, they're projecting out their struggle, and they're saying to everybody, it's wrong, this is incorrect, this is wrong, society can't accept this, because they won't accept it of themselves, right? They won't accept it of themselves. We saw this a lot throughout the 90s and early 2000s, where the people who were the most vocal, who were literally like founding foundations and funneling money and supporting conversion therapy camps and just going absolutely haywire with this, they would either come out as gay or be caught in a gay scandal. It happened a lot. It happened a lot. It's happening less because there's less of them, I think, because now it's okay to be gay and people are saying, yeah, I'm gay, and everybody goes, okay, cool, and then moving on with their lives. It's not such a huge thing, certainly on the national stage. I'm sure that there are individual states that still struggle with this, absolutely. But the trans issue seems to be the new thing that has captured everybody's attention, but here we go. Same story. Different group. Take that, white nationalists. We got one. I really do think that that's where all of this, like, I think fear plays the biggest part. And that we as people do not have a handle on our emotions and our emotional state. And we're driven primarily by our emotions, and fear is a big one. Fear is a big one. And when it comes to this concept of self-exploration, it's very scary to do, especially if you're in an environment that is going to judge you for the results of that exploration. Like, I can imagine how terrifying it must be for a person to realize that they are gay in an environment that oppresses gay people. And I can see why such a person would pursue the line of becoming the biggest oppressor. Nobody can accuse me of being gay if I'm oppressing gays. I don't know how I got on this subject again, but speaking of hyperfixation. Lou Blanchet over on Twitch, good to see you. COVID charges against Bernier dropped. So, for those of you who do not know, Maxime Bernier is the leader of the People's Party of Canada, the furthest right party in Canada, which is, kind of saying something. And during the COVID period, he was charged on 2 counts. The Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms announced the withdrawal of 2 COVID-19 charges against People's Party of Canada leader Maxime Bernier. The charges stemmed from his attendance at a protest against Ontario's stay-at-home orders in Niagara Falls, Ontario. Representatives from the Justice Center provided legal counsel to Bernier, facilitating the withdrawal of the charges, yabba, 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 so on and so forth. The decision came after Bernier made a donation to a Niagara region charity. So, just in case you were thinking that this was about justice, but the far right is going to be really annoying about this. It's the reason why I bring it up. The far right is just going to be really fucking annoying about this. Yeah, Bernier is pretty stupid. But he's a right winger, and not just any right winger, like a far right winger. Christian Heritage is probably further right than the PPC, but the PPC is the furthest right candidate who runs a full slate. Ben, getting all technical. Well, actually, John, technically, Christian Heritage... How dare you, sir? How dare you? In your correctness, you, sir, are technically correct. The best kind of correct. Lou writes, I think there is a degree of realpolitik to the phenomenon you explain, that maybe some of these issues don't matter much to politicians either way, but to secure vote banks, they will support controversial opinions. I think that's right. No, I think that's absolutely correct. American politics don't actually matter, right? American politics don't actually matter. You're getting a Zionist either way, right? So all politics in America, and I include Canada in this because Canada is essentially a vassal state, and I'll be so bold as to say all politics across Europe as well. So all politics across the capitalist West societies, Australia, they're all vanity projects, all of them. Nobody is running for office in order to actually do anything, right? Nobody has a vision or an idea or a thought, right? If you're a capitalist operating in the religion of capitalism, right, you are out of ideas. It's the reason you're a religious acolyte, right? You don't have thoughts. You don't have an idea of how to get out of these things. You're not doing a scientific analysis, nor are you listening to people who are doing a scientific analysis. That all politics in the United States are vanity projects with the goal of, I'm the governor. You can see that with Donald Trump. Donald Trump wanted to be the president. He ran a vanity project. And that vanity project was, I'll be the president. They say I can't be the president. I'll show them I'll be the president. Look at me, I'm the president. It's all vanity, right? Maybe some of them are also like, I can make some money in corruption schemes and do some insider trading and all that. But it's all just, it's the worship of the self, right? It's just the worship of the self. Nobody is getting into politics in order to actually improve the lives of anybody but themselves. And so the best strategy is to just, I went to the place where my constituents gather and they said, we don't like trans people. And so I go, I don't like trans people too. And they all go, yeah! And I go, vote me. I don't think that any American politician at any level has any principles at all. At all. And I really want to be clear about this so I can make the most controversial statement I possibly can. I include Bernie Sanders and AOC in that too. They're just playing the Hulk Hogan. They're just the hero, right? They're just, when they go to their constituent that is supporting them, their constituents go, healthcare. And so Bernie Sanders goes, we here really care about healthcare. Because he wants to be a senator, and that's it. He wants to sell his book, and that's it. AOC is running the same scam, right? It's just that now and most people throughout American, the theory of American politics has been, for the most part, that, people will vote for a hero. So you want to look like a hero. So you want to stand up and say, I really care about the environment or whatever they're saying, right? But now people are willing to vote for a heel. People are willing to vote for the villain now, because this system has become so antagonistic to life that people are trying to throw wrenches into it. And so all you got to do now is stand up and be like, what a bunch of losers these guys are. They've been in power for 40 years and everything's in decline and decay. What a bunch of terrible losers. I'm going to go in there and drain the swamp. We're going to help everybody. We're going to make everything better for everybody. Vote Trump, right? What a bunch of losers. That's all you got to do. And people go, haha, this guy's an asshole. Vote. He'll go in there and fuck these guys up. He'll throw a wrench into the system that's fucking me over every single day. That's why Democrats are so cute. They're like, he keeps acting so reprehensibly and people still support him. I don't understand it. And they're supporting him because he acts reprehensibly. Because they go, oh yeah, if that's how he's treating people around him, if that's how he's treating me, he's definitely going to treat these other politicians that way. Good. Fuck them. Haha. Deal with Trump. If I had to put one sound effect on what is going on in America today, it is own the libs. That's it. No. Lou continues, I don't think it's all vanity. Okay. I just think the nature of political and hierarchical systems produces people who compromise on probably genuinely held beliefs to achieve higher positions. Yeah, they have no principles. That try and bring your ideology to change the position of power, and the position of power changes your ideology. Right. I just feel like you're putting like little hurdles in the way, right? You're obfuscating something for yourself, right? Where I'm just cutting to the chase. Like maybe they've lied to themselves. Like maybe they lie to themselves and say, I have principles. But if they had principles, they'd resign, right? If they had principles, they would say, oh, this is obviously a fraudulent system. We need to fund a revolution and work to overthrow this system. There is no reform movement to be had, right? Like if they actually had principles, that's what they would be saying. But their goal is to be the senator, right? And so maybe they believe they have principles, right? But that just means that they don't have awareness. They're not self-aware. Big surprise. Like, as unsurprising a statement that exists. That it's a vanity project. Maybe they fool themselves into thinking it's not a vanity project. But if at the end of the day, you're willing to just bend the knee to power in order to stay inside baseball in a system that's literally committing genocides, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. I think a lot of politicians start off looking for genuine good. Maybe in that, little kid kind of way. Maybe. Everyone wants to believe that they're helping. Right? Everyone wants to believe they're the hero. But again, I think that what you're describing is vanity, right? I'm a good person. I'm such a good person. I'm the best of people. Oh, sure, we have to compromise a little bit. Oh, sure, we have to put, sometimes it's important to put aside one's principles for the greater good. And because it's me that's doing it, then it is for the greater good. I'm going into politics because I'm such a good person. It is vanity. Vanity isn't just, I'm gonna fuck everybody over and make a lot of money. Ha ha ha. That's not what vanity is. Right? Vanity is the belief that that you are special and better than everybody else. right? And that decisions you make are just inherently and naturally good, right? And so saying, well, some politicians do get into politics to try and do good. Yes, I'm sure that they believe that in their vanity. Because they refuse to actually look at the system for what it is. And their objective is not actually to change the system or do any of that kind of stuff. It's to be part of that system. Because that'll make them special and good and wealthy. Right? They want to be part of that system. And they're willing to compromise their integrity and their principles that they never actually had in order to do it. And how do I know they don't have any principles? Because if they did have principles, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. They would be organizing with these kids in these universities, and they would be organizing a revolutionary movement if they had principles. Because the system of electoral politics in America is dead. Full-scale dead, rotting corpse, lying on the ground, not moving anymore. Total death. Like, maybe you could put an argument forward to say it's like a shambling zombie, so there's like some kind of forward momentum that's happening, but it's definitely dead. So the idea that we're going to go in there and change the system and make things better, I think that's just another illustration of their vanity. That we can do it. We're so big and powerful and strong and important, and it's necessary that we do these things that cannot happen. America is not going to reform itself. The American electoral system is not going to reform itself. Sorry, mate, you're writing so much that I'm losing you. But I like the stuff you're saying. I want you to know that. Like, I know I'm coming off as kind of like glib, but it's because I'm feeling kind of... The word I have found is zany. Zany. Like, even take Trump, who's a weird person. Yeah, weird person. That's the nice thing to say. He started off with the same issues as most people about politics, but once he touched the principles in anything, from an HOA to a president to a UN Secretary General... I think I'm losing your point on that. I think a lot of politics start off, for certain, as selfless without too much ego. But I think you conflate vanity and naivety here. They think they can change it not out of vanity. They think they can change it out of naivety, and that they have grown up in the system, and that, I think, is a big difference. And I mean, I think we do have to acknowledge that, like, if I wanted to step off of my demonization soapbox for a second, naivety is a good word to use, I think. There is a kind of a degree of hopefulness, like a toxic hopefulness. They actually believe that the system can change. And I went on this big fucking rant about this kind of earlier on. Because I'm so sick and tired of this language that says, we need to support X policy. Don't support whatever policy you want. It's not going to happen. Right? Support whatever fucking policy you want. It's not going to happen. Right? Like, at this stage in the game, to push anything through this dead political zombie corpse of a system is going to require a mass mobilization of the populace that is so large that we might as well have a revolution. Like, we might as well just do a revolution. Like we're literally going to need millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of people surrounding the White House for months in order to get them to increase the minimum wage $1. Like, we might as well just go in there. Like, really, we might as well just do it. If that's the energy that it's going to take. And incidentally, it looks like that's true. It looks like that is the energy that it's going to take. And so, to me, the idea that we just need to support good policies or better politicians or any of that kind of thing, like, it's past naive. It's beyond naive. It supersedes the concept of naivety on such a scale that to use the word naive to describe it does not capture the enormity of it. Like, it's denialism, toxic hopefulness. It's refusing to acknowledge reality. It's no longer responding to evidence. It's just the language to describe the phenomenon does not yet exist. That a Shakespeare is going to show up and find the word, but it's going to require a Shakespeare to do it. That's the scope and scale of what we're discussing right now. And so, yeah, I can believe that there's people within that system that still think that they can actually get blood to pump in this zombie corpse. But they can't. It's over. It's finished. That we need to be putting our energy towards revolutionary forces at this point. That we should no longer be focusing on electoral politics at all. And we should be looking at those who do focus at electoral politics as kind of goofy. Like doing CPR on a skeleton. Like, just vote blue. I knew it. Dylan CIA Burns is in here. And of course the CIA wants you to just vote blue. Just vote blue no matter who. Vote blue no matter who. We what we promised. Now what we promised to the American people. Jack, now come on. What we promised to the American people. What we promised to the American people is that we will absolutely not do a genocide. Mm-hmm. We will not. No, not one single genocide will happen under President Joe Biden. Vote blue. America is the greatest country in America. Like, the main issue in neoliberalism is that the democratic system is skewed towards those with wealth immensely to the point where without wealth, you are barely a political factor. Yeah, that's not just neoliberalism, that's just capitalism generally. That the only time you can get capitalism to not operate that way is when you put forward such heavy revolutionary energy that the system of capital is threatened so thoroughly and it can no longer effectively destroy you through cops and military. And it feels so threatened that it has to offer reform. That's what the New Deal was, right? It's happened before in American history. That the New Deal was the American populace rising up against its system of government, the system of capital, and basically saying, we could just overthrow you, you know. We could just do that. And the capitalists going, hey, whoa, no, we don't need to, hey, whoa, we don't need to overthrow. What are you talking about? Oh, tax rate. Yeah, we'll raise the taxes. Yeah, we'll raise tax. 100%. Like, corporations were paying a tax rate of 95%. Billionaires were paying a tax rate of 90% in the New Deal. And that was because when the leaders of the country looked out of their windows, they saw thousands and thousands and thousands of people camped out holding signs that said revolution. Trade unionists, socialists, and communists were threatening to overthrow the system of capital. And so the system of capital gave them reforms and they took it, which I consider that to be a major mistake. They should not have taken those reforms. But I understand why they did. Yeah, and of course, as people do, social democracy welfare states are better, which is similar to the idea of the New Deal. But those institutions only exist because of communists and trade unionists and socialists, and dare I say anarchists. That and it's the exact same arrangement. Because of the threat of overthrow, capitalists capitulate and give concessions. And that's how you end up with your social democracies. And what I always say is, it's only a matter of time before the capitalists regress those concessions. The capitalists are not just going to let you have those concessions permanently, right? They were just giving those to you to placate the revolution that you were planning. And as soon as that revolutionary energy dissipates, and as soon as that revolutionary energy is gone, and as soon as they think that they can get away with something, they will. Right? So I feel like whenever I get into these conversations with people who are big proponents of social democracies, I see a lot of resting on their laurels. I see a lot of people who are just like, haha, we did it. Well, we should just focus on social democracy. Well, you don't end up with a social democracy because capitalists are nice. You end up with social democracies because capitalists are terrified of the populace. And I actually make the argument that if you're going to get the revolutionary energy in order to end up with a social democracy, then you might as well just have the revolution and go full bore. But, like, and this is just it, Lou, like, in the country I was born, there are lots of protests for many of these rights. Right. So we have to waste the productivity of the nation to get them out on the streets in protest against their leadership to actually get an improvement, to actually get the leadership to do the thing that they're supposed to be doing in the first place. It's a total waste of time and effort. Like, this is something that's really indicative of the system of capital. Is that it wastes productivity immensely. There are immense wastes of productivity. And protests are a total waste of productivity. People are spending time going out onto streets, waving signs and saying, fuck you? What a waste. Holy goddamn shit. Like, you talk about a decline in productive forces. So if this is the strategy for increasing the productivity of the nation, and for making sure that we remain competitive on the world market, like, like when there are protests in China, people resign. It leads to, like, major resignations. Deng Xiaoping himself resigned over the Tiananmen Square, right? Like, because they understand that if we are acting in such a way that leads to this and we can't prevent it, it's so bad. Like, it's so bad. The entire point of our argument for our system is that people will not need to protest. The entire point of our not the entire point, but one of the major points that we put forward is that people will not need to fall into protest, that we will respond rationally to their desires and to their demands through our political apparatus. Like, I've been reading a lot about Chinese society recently because I'm fascinated by Chinese society and the transition from Maoism to Dengism, the transition from imperialism to Maoism, the transition from Deng to Zemin and then Hu Jintao and now Xi Jinping. Fucking fascinating stuff. Really, really fascinating shit. And the, like, one of Mao's major scandals is what's called the Tiananmen incident, where there was this huge protest that he condemned as counter-revolutionary and all this kind of stuff, because that's how Mao rolled. But it's like it's a major scandal, for sure. But here in the West, we would just be like, yeah, that's just a Tuesday. Protest, okay. We don't listen to those. We don't care. So, and the system of capital is no longer responding to protest. That should be very clear. Take a look at the university campuses today, and the major, massive protest movements that are going on in the United States on the campuses over this Gaza genocide right now. Right? Talk about your wasted productivity. Right? Talk about like a major, major waste of productivity and time and effort. But the system of capital doesn't give a fuck. It's not responding. It's not responding to those kids. It doesn't care what they say or what they think. The universities are not divesting. The governing system, the electoral system's not responding. Right? Biden just approved another $1 billion for Israel. Like, we don't give a fuck about protest. Like, the only reason we should be protesting right now is for revolutionary practice. And that's it. That we should be going to places to protest in order to practice our own parties and our own organizations for what a revolution's going to look like, and to try to find people to join the cause. Eggs D. There was less sign waving in my birth country and far more burning of bins and fighting police. I mean, yeah, if you're going to do it, you better do it right. Anarchist, communists, anarchists. I'm going to say that you said anarchist and communists, because anarchists and communists are like, have a long history of antagonism. There is typically at best a sort of begrudging respect between anarchists and communists. And anytime I do any reading on the history of anarchism and communism, a lot of the acrimony comes from the anarchists. That the communists would really love it if the anarchists could just, like... I know I would. Yeah, our comrades when the revolution is fought, but counter-revolutionaries when the state is run by the state communists. Yeah, you just hit it on the head. Well, and it makes sense. Like, anarchists are anti-state even when the state is run by communists, right? And I make the argument that anarchists are a net positive, even though you can point at situations where anarchists have worked with fascists against communists, which is the oddest shit of my life, but okay. The promise of communism is that we will dismantle the state. That's the promise of communism. That we'll live in a classless, moneyless, religionless, so secular, stateless society. That's the promise of communism. That it's attainable, that we can do it. The anarchist says, well, let's just overthrow the state, abolish the state, disperse it, and be done with it. And the communist says, I don't think that we can. I think that we have to manage the decline of the state, and that the state will wither away, is the phrase that Lenin used. That the state will wither away until eventually it's gone, and we no longer have use of it. Trotsky wrote that people will use money as bookmarks, and it will be a historical artifact that people will look at and say, what was that for? And the response will be, well, there was a currency that we were printing. It was a medium of exchange to kind of keep track of whether or not you were participating. And the response that people will have to that is, oh, so nobody trusted one another. So, yeah, that's right. Nobody trusted one another. And but the anarchists are skeptical of the communists, because will the communists allow the state to wither away? What evidence is there that communists allow the state to wither away? Is the state withering away? Will it wither away? When? What are the communists doing to show us that the state is in fact withering away? And that's essentially what the anarchists are doing, right? They're putting fuel on the fire, and they're saying, okay, if your claim is that the state's going to wither away, can we make that happen? Okay, guys, my computer is doing weird things in front of my eyes. So if the system suddenly shuts down, it wasn't the CIA. Ad vitam. It's been a long time since one of you have come in. Communism misspelt. Communisme did 300 million's death. Space exclamation mark. No need more promise. Dude, please, 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 please get away from this garbage that you're reading. Like, it is embarrassing. Like, it really is. Like, it's straight up, like, at this point, it's just daddy worship. Daddy told me this, and I believed him, because I have no critical thinking skills. I'm still a little kid. Yeah, communism killed the dinosaurs, exactly. Like, you really, really do not want to get into, like, a body count argument. Right? Like, you really don't want to walk down this path. Like, I promise you. It's not a winning argument. This is how you know capitalists are kind of detached and out of touch with things, is that they make these losing arguments all the time. And they're just losing arguments, and they just display their lack of knowledge gleefully. Just like cock out, they make the most arrogant proclamation possible, embarrass themselves in front of everyone, and get very simply dismantled with just like extremely basic observations. And I do mean like basic, like any grade schooler should be able to make these observations. The idea that communism killed 30 million people, sorry, not 30, 300 million people. Like, what are you even talking about? When? At what time? And even if under communism, like, millions of people died under communism, like, the system of capital was born out of genocide and slavery. It's a genocidal settler colonial system that literally exterminated entire civilizations. The entire continent of North and South America were populated by civilizations that were eradicated by the system of capital. The entire continent of Africa was enslaved through a colonial system that came out of Europe. And that's how capitalism began. That's how it started. You've got nothing like that under the system of communism. Nothing even remotely close to that. And so this inflated number claim bullshit is just embarrassing. Communism killed 300 billion people, with Stalin's big spoon ate all the grain, mouse famine, Vavula iPhone. It's just dumb. Lou says, I side with the anarchists because ultimately all hierarchy is corruptible, whether power is distributed via capital or other means, because I believe in the very Machiavellian view. Only the anarchists have true equality, which is no power structure, but equally the lack of productivity will be insane. Well, it sort of depends on how you define productivity, right? Like, is people enjoying their lives and having a good time productive? Like, what's productivity? Like, how do you define that? What do you care about in your society? Yeah, the communism 1 billion always grows in numbers. Thanks, Fiddleford. Absolutely, dude. It's always, like, soon it's just going to be 100 billion. Soon it'll be the entire population of the Earth. I have the Black Book of Communism, which said that Nazis were victims of communism. Lou, look, the reason why I still say that I'm a communist, or that I do say, not still say, but that I do say I'm a communist, and that, like, anytime I listen to anarchists speak, like what you just said there, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, Anytime I listen to anarchists speak, I'm always doing that. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I disagree with anarchists on one key point. Anytime I get into a debate with somebody, I'm always looking for the linchpin. Every argument has a linchpin, right? Which is why deceptive debaters don't want to be honest about their linchpins, right? Because they have no principles and they don't want to acknowledge the weakness of their position, or maybe they don't even know what their linchpin is, right? And what the linchpin is it's the center of your thinking. It's the absolute bedrock principle by which all other things flow from. And so whenever I get into a quote-unquote debate or an argument with somebody, I'm always trying to find out what their linchpin actually is, which can be difficult to do because a lot of times it's literally just I worship money and myself and chaos, and I don't give a shit about anybody else but myself. It's like, okay, so you're just a capitalist, right? You worship money. That's the linchpin. Okay, how embarrassing for you. So you find out what the linchpin is, and then you just attack the linchpin. You just try to pull that linchpin out. And if you can pull that linchpin out, then the whole thing falls apart. And so this is the linchpin, and I'll be honest. I'm an honest guy. The linchpin between anarchists and me. And so if you're an anarchist and you're out there and you want to attack my position on communism, here's how you do it. This is the linchpin. Is that if you just dissolve the state, like we take power, revolution, all of the cops and all this, we just ban, abolish all of that, right? And then we just go along our merry way. Literally the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to get run over. Straight up. You're just going to get run over. Even an individual capitalist will hire mercenaries. Capitalists will get back together and find the cops that you just abolished and create a private militia and then roll you over. Right? If you try to run a society on anarchist principles while there are still capitalists walking around with huge with access to anything, even the promise, right? Even if you strip them of their assets, they have the promise of future assets that they can convince former cops and former military to get behind. And so you have to maintain a state. You have to. And Lenin even writes about how unfortunate it is. Like, it's not something communists are, like, gleefully happy that they have to do. But the alternative is to just be wiped out. Lou's just like, I fully agree. Great. Then you should be a communist, Lou. Like, the end goal for both communists and anarchists are the same. Near as I can tell. Maybe there's, like, modest differences, and people have a different kind of vision or perception of the society that they would like to live in. But more or less, in a broad brushstroke, the end goal for anarchists and communists is the same. It's just, how do you get there? What's the journey? What's the path look like? And I think that the people who are articulating the best path forward, that has borne the most fruit, are the communists. And that I'm not seeing much fruit being borne by anarchist movements. And I'm seeing lots of fruit getting born from communist movements. Compton writes, 300 million, so communist countries' self-inflicted conditions of turbo world wars and still managed to catch up with the West as an industrial superpower from agrarian to space? Really good point, Compton. Yeah, so communism is so powerful that we can murder 300 million of our own citizens and still beat capitalism. That's a really good point, Compton. I'm going to use that from now on. The next time a guy comes in here with like 30 million Vavula iPhone, I'm just going to be like, oh, so communism is so good that we can eliminate like 20% of our population, 40% of our population, and still win. That's good, man. Because that's sharp. I like how sharp that is. That's really skewering. Lou continues, and thus what I find to be the political paradox is formed. Freedom comes only from abolition of hierarchy, but abolition of hierarchy causes a direct loss of freedom from even just a handful of maniacal people, even when most people, I think, are good people. Well, the bottom line is that capitalists are not just going to give up. Like, they're just not going to give up without a fight. You can see that most clearly in the Gusanos in Miami. You want the clearest possible example. The Gusanos in Miami, who were born in Miami, who never lived in Cuba a day in their life, they're still screaming about how we need to get back into Cuba and reestablish my family farm, my family plantation. Right? Like, they're still talking about that. So there's like, it takes a minute. Like, it takes a minute. Like, people don't just, well, we lost that revolution. Well, time to become a worker, I guess. Like, Western literature is absolutely loaded with a disgraced prince who is exiled, reclaiming his rightful position as king, or finding vengeance or revenge against those who bespoiled him. Right? Western literature is littered with that idea. And so everybody views themselves that, and people do view themselves that way. That, like, these gusanos in Miami view themselves as despoiled princes, as exiled princes, whose birthright was stolen from them by the evil Fidel Castro. And I'm going to go back and reclaim my birthright. Like, that kind of shit is real. That's a real thing. Like, so that means that there's an intergenerational struggle. Then that means that you can't just say, we did it. That you have to be vigilant, and you have to be passing the baton down through the line, through leadership, through communist leadership, basically saying, watch out for those gusanos. Here's the baton. Watch out for those gusanos. They killed Che Guevara. Watch out for those gusanos. They're coming. They're coming. You got a standing military? Good, because the gusanos are coming. Here's the baton. Peace. And then they die. And then the next generation of people who have never met these gusanos and were not alive when the revolution happened are holding this baton, and all they actually have is a warning and the history that they have. Right? And the hope from the previous generation is that they've instilled the new generation, the next generation, with the seriousness of the warning. And that the new generation doesn't just go, wow, Grandpa, what an old fart that guy was, constantly talking shit about the gusanos. These gusanos seem okay. Come on home, gusanos. That's the big concern. Right? Like, Fidel Castro would, like, be like, that's problematic. Right? Like, Mao lost his mind about it when Deng was talking that way. That's what the Cultural Revolution was in China. Is that the Dengists were saying, hey, we should open China up and allow foreign investment into our borders, right? Maybe being at war with these guys is not so good. Maybe we could move forward with some more, like, peacefully, with some stability, and like, negotiate our way through and all this. And Mao was just like, no! Capitalists are evil, and we will fight them to the death. The class struggle is the most important aspect of Marxism. I will, in fact, at the end of my life, launch a cultural revolution in order to purge the society of capitalist elements, including Deng himself, incidentally. Which I always found to be like, I'm reading this stuff just very recently. Today I was reading some of this stuff, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, Deng literally got removed from party leadership and party positions through the Cultural Revolution, and then immediately, when Mao dies, he becomes the leader of the country. It's like, yeah, I think that the people of China were all kind of just waiting for Mao to die. I think. Like, I think that the people of China were looking at Mao with great respect, that they loved Mao. I think that that's definitely true, that they all loved Mao. They were grateful for Mao, the revolutionary leader. He freed China from the imperialists, defeated the Kuomintang, defeated the fascists, the nationalists. Like, the people of China really respected that guy, for sure. But I think the people of China were also sitting there being like, boy, we could use some stability. You know what I could really go for right about now is some stability. All this warring we're doing, the Great Leap Forward, was pretty exhausting. I could use some prosperity up in here. Isn't the whole reason we did this revolution so we could get some prosperity up in here? And so the guy they all started looking at is the guy who's like, yeah, Marxism is about prosperity and building the productive forces in order to increase the prosperity of the nation through the building of productive forces. I think probably the best way to do that is to open up to foreign trade and let them give us the means of production the way that Adam Smith said that they would. And Mao just lost his mind about it. Absolutely not. Which, incidentally, I respect. I don't think that Mao was wrong for doing that. Mao spent his entire life fighting a revolutionary war against these capitalists. And here's this guy saying, let's open up the borders to them. You're goddamn absolutely fucking not. In fact, I'm going to launch a cultural revolution. I'm going to go after you for even suggesting that shit. And you're going to be the next leader? Hell no. The people of China are getting behind you? Hell no. I'm going to purge you from the party. I'm going to purge 3 million people. I'm going to persecute 3 million people. We're going to shut down the universities. He shut down the universities. And then he died. For a brief fractional moment, Mao's selected predecessor was in power. The first thing that Mao's predecessor did was rehabilitate Deng, amongst other people, which kind of shows you that even the people who were closest to Mao thought that he was going too far and thought that he was going a little off the rails about all this. And then Deng takes power shortly thereafter. It's like, and then the whole opening up and the whole liberalization and the whole market reform era happened. And it's just like, I really feel like the Cultural Revolution in the last 10 years of Mao's life was basically the people of China being like, we love you, Mao. We know you're doing this out of concern. We know you're doing this out of concern, and we love you. And nobody wanted to stand up to him. I think the people of China understood what was happening, but they loved him, and so they let him do it. And I actually think it's really beautiful that the people of China, do you know what they call the Cultural Revolution? The 10 years of chaos. Or the 10 years of havoc. And so when Deng came in, he was basically just like, you know what we could use? Some stability. And the people of China went, yes. Yes, please. Some stability. We could really go for some stability. And Deng opened up the schools again. Let people go back to the universities. So it was a tumultuous time. It was a tumultuous time, a tumultuous time, and but I love that story so much. I don't know how I got on that story, but I love that story so much because I really do think that it is a story of compassion and empathy and power. And even better, when Deng took power, he outright said, the first statement that he made when he took power is he released a list of 4 things that he wanted to pursue and what the people of China should be focusing on. And point number 4 was to uphold Mao Zedong thought. So even Deng, I think, understood and respected where Mao was coming from, even though he was frustrated by, obviously frustrated by what Mao was doing, I think that's clear. I think that he ultimately understood it and respected it. And of course, Mao's death leads to the Gang of Four, a general attempt at a coup and an uprising from the Gang of Four that is unsuccessful. And the Gang of Four led by Mao's wife, no less. So there's a lot of love that Mao launches the Cultural Revolution because he loves China, he loves the revolution. He believes that any interaction with capitalism is going to lead to the end of the revolution, and he has no reason to think otherwise. He fought his life in a revolutionary war against capitalism, so he's not the guy to negotiate with capital. He's just not that guy. He's not gonna do that. And everybody knows it, right? It's like why Worf didn't become the captain of the Enterprise, you know? Because Worf's not that guy. That's not what he does. It's not his shtick. And so the people of China and Deng and everybody in the Communist Party watched Mao do it. Watched Mao do the Cultural Revolution. And they all went along with it. Because they knew that what he was doing out of a love for China, a love for the Communist Party, a love for the revolution, a love for himself, his own legacy, his own desire to see the revolution succeed, and that he was acting out of a place of love and also a place of fear that all would be lost, and where the frustration came from the Communist Party and from Deng was that they wished that Mao trusted them more. That they wished that Mao trusted the systems that they had put in place, trusted the National People's Congress, trusted that they too also had the best interests of the Communist Party, the revolution, and China in mind. And so when Mao died and the Cultural Revolution ended, the Gang of Four situation resolved itself. 2 members of the Gang of Four immediately apologized. And then Deng began the process of market liberalization, opened up the economy to foreign investment, private capital, under the concept of let some people get rich first, and that we will manage these capitalists, and that we will ensure that they don't infect the National People's Congress, and ensure that it's the Communist Party that will always be in power for the benefit of the Chinese people. And near as I can tell, that's basically what's going on there. That Deng Xiaoping took power when he was 74. So he wasn't in power for very long. He steps down after what's called the Tiananmen Square Massacre, which is essentially a color revolution started by the CIA. And by the time that happens, Deng is well into his 90s. I think late 80s, early 90s, if I do the math correctly. And so he's ready to retire in the first place. And probably the Tiananmen Square Massacres is literally just him just being like, I don't want to deal with this shit anymore. I'm going to step down. And then Zeman comes into power. He makes the 3 represents. He establishes the 3 represents, which is that the CCP will represent the majority of the people of China, the greatness of the Communist Party, and I forget the third one. There's a good one for you. I forget the third one offhand. But it was essentially a statement of like the CCP is going to operate for the benefit of the Chinese people. And he continued to manage the market reforms and the liberalization of the Chinese economy. And then Hu Tao Is that his name? He came in and basically continued the trajectory. Both were lauded within the CCP or the CPC as being rulers by consensus. That they were consensus rulers. Hu Tao, thank you, XD. Hu Tao. That they were rulers by consensus. And that ultimately all culminates in Xi Jinping. And that Xi Jinping is the culmination of Dengist thought. Because Deng made the prediction that we would need a leader to fight corruption within the Communist Party, and we would need a leader to deal with the inequality that these market reforms would bring. And that's exactly what Xi Jinping was elected on, and that's exactly what he's doing, while simultaneously managing the new era of China on the world stage. China is entering a new era today, like right now, and under Xi Jinping, and it's really, really, really crazy to watch. Like, it's actually like if I didn't see it, if I wasn't seeing it with my own eyes, I don't think I would believe it. Really, I think I would remain in a place of deep, deep skepticism, and be very skeptical of anybody who was telling me that story, that China was rising, and China was spreading wealth throughout its own society, and the infrastructure that they're building. The infrastructure that they're building is outrageous. Is outrageous. Like, I recently watched a video of a fellow who basically who was just walking through the subway system. That's all he was doing. He got on the subway system, and he would just get off at every stop, and then he would look around the subway station, and then he'd get back on the subway and he'd go to the next station. What they've built makes anything look just silly. Anything that we do just looks silly. And I think you're correct, Lou. Chinese city building for infrastructure is great, but I do think that one-child policy has hamstrung China. I think that's right. But no one is more acutely aware of that than the Chinese themselves. That was a policy that was passed by Deng because I think they were deeply concerned about overpopulation. That during that period of time there was like this overpopulation craze. Everybody got really hyper focused on overpopulation as a real concern, and they were deeply, deeply concerned that they wouldn't actually be able to keep up. That the population would grow faster than their productive capacity and faster than their ability to feed people. And I think that people within China generally acknowledge that the one-child policy was ultimately a failure, but they simultaneously say that the passage of the one-child policy shows the willingness of the CPC and of the Chinese people to make great decisions, right? To make strong, powerful decisions and to experiment. That the period of Deng, like the Dengist period from the 80s to the 2000s, was a period of great experimentation. Enormous amounts of policies were passed. And no one is more acutely aware of the mistakes that the CPC made through that period of time than the Chinese people themselves. And I think what the Chinese people really respect about their government is not that they are free from error. It's that when they do make errors, they acknowledge those errors and then work to make amends. They don't boneheadedly continue making the same error. And I think that's what the people of China really respect about their government system and their leadership. Like the National People's Congress and the Communist Party of China has an approval rating of over 90%. Like, it's staggering. It's stunning. It's just incredible that it's happening. It's just incredible to see. And right now, Xi Jinping is leading, is becoming the trading partner with the entire world. The entire world is becoming China's trading partner. And it's all because Deng revealed something about Western capital. He revealed something incredible that Mao didn't trust. That Mao had heard the theory, but he didn't trust. That Deng revealed that Western capitalists don't actually understand economics. He revealed that nakedly for anyone to see. And I think it's incredibly powerful. That Adam Smith called it. Adam Smith said that capitalists will take their manufacturing and ship it out of the country to the detriment of that country in order to pursue ever greater profits. Because it's the profit motive. That's the theory of Western capital. It's the profit motive. Well, the centerpiece of the theory of Marxism is the means of production, is the manufacturing, is the factories. And so Deng, I think, did take a gamble that he was going to open up these markets, and the Americans, in their pursuit of their theory, the profit motive, would transfer from their own country to China the means of production. And that's exactly what they did. And he revealed to everyone, and anyone who thinks otherwise is just a fool, frankly, that the American system of the profit motive is wrong. It's flawed. It destroys the country that it's a part of, because it creates a people who are willing to sell the goose that lays the golden egg to their enemies. The Chinese communists were literally saying out loud in front of people, seize the means of production. And the capitalists gave it to them in exchange for access to a currency that they themselves print. So what's happening in China today is 100% because of Deng. And because of the Dengists. 100%. But the Dengists would not have been able to do what they had done without Mao. And without the Maoists. So I think there's a lot of respect there. A lot of respect there. Lou writes, I counter that Western capitalists understand economics brilliantly, but that they intentionally avoid national economics in favor of the individual. That's just another way of saying that their theory is the profit motive. Right? Like the theory of Western capital, which has been disproven, it's no longer a scientific theory, in the same way that phrenology is not a scientific theory, is that the way to organize a society is through rational individuals making decisions for themselves in a free market. That's the theory of Western capital, and that the pursuit of profit, increasing profits, getting access to dollars, right? If you're getting access to more dollars, then you are doing good economics. And so that's the theory of Western capital, which I have articulated as a religious ideology, because it's not a science, like it's not a scientific pursuit anymore. Like it harms everybody. It causes problems for everybody. So it's a religious ideology, which I break down as the worship of money, the worship of the self, and the worship of chaos. Right? You have people who are in pursuit of money above all else for the benefit of themselves in a free market system, in a chaos system. And and that's the theory of Western capital. And it's wrong. It doesn't work. I mean, you can increase your profits, and you can see people who do so and make decisions brilliantly. But if you're acting brilliantly in a wrong field, then you're no brilliant person at all. The theory is profit for the individual capitalist. Yes, that's right. Not for a country. Yeah. It's the profit motive, right? Individual actors rationally making decisions for their own benefit in a free market system. That's the theory of Western capital. And I mean, you could pick any Western capitalist theorist who is writing not a critique of capital, but writing, like, Milton Friedman is your guy, right? You can read Friedman. He's prolific. The Chicago Boys, they're well known, right? Like, his entire argument is that every single individual person should pursue their own interests in a free market system. And the freer the market, the freer the people. Right? Well, they're wrong. It doesn't work. Because what you end up with is an impoverished society that doesn't even benefit the people with the money. Like look what these modern day capitalists are doing with their money. They're literally building underground bunkers in the hopes that they can escape a climate change apocalypse that they themselves are responsible for creating. The profit motive doesn't work. The societies reject it. Nature itself rejects it. It can no longer be described as a valid scientific theory. It's like phrenology, alchemy, flat eartherism. It was an idea we had that cannot deliver on its promises. Because the system of capital is the antithesis of building a society that is in balance with the universe. Capitalists like to say, well, capitalism is natural. And I always say, well, if it's natural, then why is Earth rejecting it? Looks to me like it's an evolutionary dead end. That it's going to be a dead branch. That the Earth is just going to cut right off. And if we're not careful, the best thing that we will ever be is a warning to future species that attain our level of consciousness, so that they can look at us standing up and saying, the way to organize a society and a civilization is for individuals to pursue their own self-interest in a free market system. And those species will understand, these people were death cultists. They were chaos death knights. They were telling everybody to be as selfish as possible, focus only on yourself, in the pursuit of illusionary God that we created in the first place, money, in a chaos system. And that we should not have rules or regulation or order, but should instead worship chaos. And that will somehow build civilization. And those species will look at us and they will go, wrong. Absolutely wrong. Deng proved it. Dengism proved it. The means of production is the center of economics. Whoever controls the means of production in a society controls the society. That's where power is. And Dang showed as clear as day, that capitalists are willing to sell the goose that lays the golden egg in pursuit of their god and their religious ideology. You're right, Conton. Conton derailing us into Hades 2 conversation. You're right, dude. Chaos Boons absolutely are lit. Although I liked the art for the original Chaos in Hades 1 more than I like this Chaos. The second I saw it, I was like, not as good. Nope. The original Chaos was better in terms of the art. Although the art style they're going for is a little bit more... I think regal would be the word that I would use. There's like a refinement, right? Anyway. That's a weird way of ending this, but that's the way it is. So we've hit 9 o'clock. It's the end of this one today. Once again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for your beautiful contributions to this. Thanks for the wonderful conversation. It was nice having that chat. A good way to end this final one. You guys all have a wonderful weekend. We're going into the weekend. Go to the beach. Get outside. Take a walk. Touch grass. but like, get into nature. The natural world is your best friend. Try to have a conversation with your creator. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.